Chapter 34:10. Burning Blood Soul Transformation. Godly King Stellar Aspect, who had made up his mind, bellowed with a resolute gaze and a sinister tone. He had finally used his ultimate taboo divine power, releasing his most terrifying strength. Following his angry roar, his blood, chi, and divine power began to surge violently like boiling water, churning violently within his body. His 100-foot-tall body began to swell and expand as dark red sanguine flames erupted from his body. Not only was the blood eye on his forehead spewing sanguine flames, even the 6-5 colored wings on his back turned dark red. Godly King Stellar Aspect's body constantly expanded. 200 feet, 300 feet, 500 feet, in a short span of 3 seconds, he had transformed into a 1,000-foot-tall giant, resembling a small metallic mountain. At the same time, his combat strength increased by 4 times, reaching his peak and most berserk state. This was because he had burned his divine blood and essence to use this taboo divine power. Even though this divine power's might was terrifying, allowing him to increase his combat strength by 4 times and maintain it for 30 minutes, allowing him to kill enemies of a higher level. However, he had to pay a huge price for burning his lifeblood. Regardless of whether he succeeded or not, his lifeblood would wither after 30 minutes, causing him to suffer a backlash and severe injuries. He had lost at least 1,000 years of painstaking cultivation and lifeblood. It was a terrible loss. If he did not have any top divine pills or treatment methods, he would have to recuperate in seclusion for decades to recover. Of course, he would have to cultivate for another 1,000 years to recover the 1,000-year cultivation and lifeblood he had lost. Without a doubt, this was a terrible loss. However, Godly King Stellar Aspect had been forced to this point and was truly helpless. Godly King Stellar Aspect's body was covered in sanguine flames as he stood proudly in the middle of the heaven-vanquishing sword array like a grim reaper that had walked out of hell. He remained motionless despite the thousands of gigantic swords slashing at him. He formed a divine seal with both hands as he controlled the 6 undamaged bronze spears and the 2 broken divine spears. Under his control, the 8 divine spears gathered together and fused together, forming a 1,000-foot-long dark gold divine spear. 8 Extremities Firmament Breaker. Godly King Stellar Aspect gripped the dark gold divine spear with both hands as he bellowed loudly and stabbed at the edge of the heaven-vanquishing sword array. Swish! His body seemed to have become one with the divine spear. He turned into a beam of light that was hundreds of feet long. Like a falling meteor, he shot towards the edge of the sword formation. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing immediately frowned, and his expression became serious. Damn it! Originally, I wanted to use the method of boiling a frog in warm water to slowly weaken his strength until I finally killed him. I didn't expect him to see through my intentions long ago. Before his strength was greatly weakened, he made up his mind to use the forbidden divine ability. With this thought flashing through his mind, Ji Tianqing could basically predict the outcome. However, even though he knew it was impossible, he still tried his best to stop them. Swoosh! Swish swish swish! Under his mental control, more than 10,000 astral swords formed a sword net, a shield of light, and a rampart that intercepted Godly King Stellar Aspect. Unfortunately, most of the sword lights were not fast enough to stop him. A small number of sword flashes formed a sword net, a barrier, and a shield of light. They managed to stop Astral Aspect, but they were penetrated directly. Crack! Crack! Bam! 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 As the sword nets, shields of light, and ramparts were breached, dull booms reverberated in the sky. Godly King Stellar Aspect finally managed to break through the various obstructions. He streaked across 1,000 kilometers of the sky and arrived at the edge of the heaven-vanquishing sword formation. 10,000 feet in front of him was a thick and solid sword flash rampart. However, he did not show any fear or hesitation. Instead, he became even more determined and frenzied. He unleashed an even faster speed and even greater strength as he charged forward. The next instant, Godly King Stellar Aspect gripped his 1,000-foot-long divine spear tightly as he stabbed the sword flash rampart. Boom! Crack! An earth-shaking, earth-shattering cracking sound erupted from within the sword formation, causing the ground within a radius of several thousand kilometers to tremble. A hole that spanned hundreds of feet appeared in the thick and solid sword flash rampart. The oval-shaped hole's surroundings were filled with dense cracks that spread out in every direction. Kacha, kacha, sounds of shattering could be heard. The hole instantly burst open and expanded by several times. Millions of fragments of divine light flew out. Godly King Stellar Aspect had finally escaped the heaven-vanquishing sword formation. After the several thousand-foot-long sanguine flame charged out of the sword formation, it plunged into the pitch-black night sky. Like a meteor streaking across the horizon, it quickly vanished. Even if Ji Tianqing chased out of the heaven-vanquishing sword formation, it was too late to stop it. He stood in the night sky and watched the meteor vanish into the horizon. He could not help but frown. He still managed to escape in the end. After all, he's a god king at the 6th firmament realm and a lackey of the Azura god emperor. His strength and means are outstanding. Unfortunately, I'm only at the 2nd firmament realm. If I reach the 4th firmament realm and recover my strength as a god king, I'll be able to kill him tonight. Ji Tianqing muttered silently. Although his tone was filled with regret, he was not angry. After all, this outcome was within his expectations. In addition, Godly King Stellar Aspect had paid a huge price to use a forbidden divine power to escape. Even if he managed to escape, he would have lost the battle. When his blood ignition divine transformation state ended, he would definitely suffer a backlash and be severely injured. And before he suffered a backlash, he could use the power of the forbidden divine power to escape to a place that Ji Tianqing would not be able to guess or catch up to. To Ji Tianqing, instead of wasting time chasing after Godly King Stellar Aspect, he might as well turn around and finish off the Golden Dragon Domain Lord and Jing Feihong. Not being able to kill Divine Envoy Vast Sky will indeed leave behind endless trouble. But I can't return empty-handed. I should at least collect some interest. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself. With a wave of his hand, he dispelled the damaged heaven-vanquishing sword formation and turned to look at the night sky behind him. He saw Chao Qingyu, Yank, and Lan still besieging the Golden Dragon Domain Lord and Jing Feihong. The two domain lords were covered in blood. Their hair was disheveled and they looked extremely wretched. Their divine power auras were extremely weak and chaotic. The two of them were at a disadvantage. They kept retreating and dodging as their injuries worsened. Just a moment ago, they were filled with joy and excitement when they saw Godly King Stellar Aspect break out of the heaven-vanquishing sword formation. They thought that the time for revenge had arrived. Unexpectedly, Godly King Stellar Aspect had no intention of counterattacking. He actually fled without looking back. The Golden Dragon Domain Lord and Jing Feihong were dumbfounded. Not only were they stunned and in disbelief, but their fighting spirit had also suffered a heavy blow. Why? Why did Lord Divine Envoy flee? Even Lord Divine Envoy is not Tianqing's match. How is this possible? He's only a lowly human godly king. How can he be so powerful? No matter how puzzled and incredulous they were, the two domain lords had no choice but to accept reality. They had been abandoned by Godly King Stellar Aspect. Their top priority was to consider how to escape. Chapter 34:11. Even though logic told the two domain lords that they should immediately flee since Godly King Stellar Aspect had fled. But the reality was that both of them were severely injured and their strength had been greatly reduced. It was just too difficult to escape from Yank, Chao Qingyu, and Lan's encirclement. Chao Qingyu and company were also shocked and they saw Godly King Stellar Aspect flee. They found it unbelievable. In their eyes, a middle-level godly king like Godly King Stellar Aspect, who was also a divine envoy of vast heaven, was already unreachable. It was already not easy for them to gain the upper hand by joining forces with Ji Tianqing to deal with Godly King's stellar aspect. In the end, while they were dealing with two domain lords, Ji Tianqing defeated Godly King's stellar aspect alone, forcing him to flee wretchedly. Reality proved that Ji Tianqing's strength was inferior to Godly King's stellar aspects, but his combat strength was stronger. This was simply too unbelievable. The three of them were old monsters who had lived for 20,000 years. They had rich experiences and knowledge. But they had never seen a godly king defeat an opponent 4 realms above him. This was completely illogical. It completely went against the system of strength and cultivation realm. Amidst their shock and excitement, a thought flashed through their minds simultaneously. Young master is truly a god. Ever since they met and followed Ji Tianqing, their knowledge was constantly refreshed as they passively received shock and stimulation again and again. Now, Ji Tianqing had created such a miracle, making them feel honored. Chao Qingyu and Lan'er had long made up their minds to follow Ji Tianqing. Since they were unrelated, their wishes had already been fulfilled. As long as they were not separated in this lifetime, they would rather follow Ji Tianqing and roam the world. As for Yank, there was also a subtle change in his heart. In the past, he was very resistant and hated Ji Tianqing, using despicable means to control him. But after following Ji Tianqing for so long and experiencing so many things, his resistance and hatred gradually disappeared. Now, he no longer resisted and gradually accepted the fact of following Ji Tianqing. He even had some expectations in his heart. When would Ji Tianqing teach him 1 or 2 ultimate skills? With Ji Tianqing's strength and heaven-defying battle prowess, he could gain a lot just by giving him some pointers. Of course, Chao Qingyu, Yank, and Lan'er didn't stop casting spells while these thoughts flashed through their minds. They all knew that since Godly King's stellar aspect had fled, Ji Tianqing only had 2 choices. They would either pursue God King's stellar aspect or kill the Golden Dragon Region Lord and Jing Feihong. But no matter what choice Ji Tianqing made, what they had to do was, to hold back the 2 domain lords. They definitely couldn't let them escape. With Yank, Chao Qingyu, and Lan'er's strength, it was indeed very difficult to defeat or kill 2 domain masters in a short period of time. However, the 2 area masters' hearts were in a mess. Their fighting spirit had completely disappeared, and they were only thinking about how to escape. The 3 of them didn't need to defeat them. They just needed to do their best to stall them. This way, the trio's mission became much easier. The Golden Dragon Region Lord and Jing Feihong were anxious to escape, but they were held back by Chao Qingyu and company. They were unable to escape. When they saw Ji Tianqing dispel the heaven-vanquishing sword array and charge over aggressively, they immediately panicked and burned with anxiety. Scram! You 3 bastards, this king will definitely not spare you. In their desperation, the 2 area masters released their divine powers without caring about anything else. They used their most powerful ultimate skills, hoping to carve out a bloody path. However, Yank, Chao Qingyu, and Lan'er were already prepared and guessed that they would act in desperation. When the destructive divine powers came, the 3 of them used all their strength to cast defensive divine powers, joining forces to form a thick wall of divine light. Bam! 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 Rumble! A deafening sound exploded, reverberating between heaven and earth. The wall of divine light within a radius of 10,000 feet was bombarded by the divine powers, trembling non-stop, and cracks began to appear. The violent impact also sent Yank, Chao Qingyu, and Lan'er flying. Yank was sent flying back 1,000 feet, Chao Qingyu was sent flying more than 3,000 feet, and Lan'er was sent flying more than 10,000 feet. The 3 of them had some turbulence in their divine powers and were temporarily unable to stabilize, so they were unable to immediately intercept the 2 area masters. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the 2 area masters did not hesitate to use the spatial laws to teleport thousands of miles away. Swoosh! Under the two area masters' divine powers, the night sky lit up with a dazzling white light, breaking open a spatial rift. At this critical moment, the two of them actually had a tacit understanding, each breaking open a spatial rift. It was obvious that the two area masters were planning to escape separately. No matter which one Ji Tianqing went after, the other had a chance of survival. This was a huge gamble, but it was also the wisest decision. Moreover, Ji Tianqing was still more than 200 miles away from them, and it seemed that he would not be able to stop them in time. The two area masters calmed down and secretly breathed a sigh of relief, hurriedly stepping into the spatial rift. As long as they entered the spatial rift, they could pass through the alternate dimension and escape thousands of miles away, instantly widening the distance between them. However, at this critical moment, the thing that the two area masters did not want to see the most happened. Ji Tianqing was still 200 miles away, but he waved the burial of heaven and slashed out a dazzling divine giant sword that was 10,000 feet long. Rising Dragon Slash. The dark golden giant sword cut through the night sky like a golden thunderbolt, instantly arriving above the two area masters' heads. Immediately after, the night sky in front of them was split open by the giant sword, and a spatial rift about 1,000 miles wide appeared. No. It was not just a spatial rift. It was 100 miles wide, and in the middle was a pitch-black void. It was like an abyss, or more accurately, a spatial fault. Within 1,000 miles, the space had already been split into two by Ji Tianqing. It was impossible for the two area masters to teleport away. If they stepped into the spatial rift, even if they were badly battered, they would only appear in the spatial fault, in the pitch-black void. Once they were in the mysterious void, they would not know where they were or where to go. They would lose their way, or even be trapped in the endless darkness, unable to return to the divine world. The two area masters were dumbfounded as they stared at the spatial fault, muttering in a daze, "How can this be? Why is he so ruthless? We're finished. We can't teleport away, only death awaits us." Even Divine King's stellar aspect was not Ji Tianqing's match, so the two area masters seemed to have already predicted that they would die. At this moment of life and death, Jing Feihong was filled with despair and disappointment, but the Golden Dragon area master was very unwilling. He gritted his teeth and made a decision that terrified Jing Feihong. "We're going to die either way, let's do it." With a low roar, he braced himself and stepped into the spatial rift, insisting on teleporting away. In the next instant, he passed through several layers of alternate dimensions and appeared in the spatial fault as he wished. Swoosh! In the pitch-black void that was 50 miles wide, the Golden Dragon area master's figure floated up and down, and soon, he would be swallowed by the darkness. Sogu. Chapter 34:12. Are you crazy? Jing Feihong's eyes widened in shock as he shouted at the Golden Dragon Domain Master in the pitch-black void. He couldn't believe that the Golden Dragon Domain Master would choose to commit suicide at a moment of life and death. That's right, this was suicide. Although godly kings had the power to break through the spatial barrier and leave the god realm to travel the universe, they were fully prepared. However, that was under the condition that he was sufficiently prepared and knew the direction and position. He definitely wouldn't travel through space randomly. The spatial fault in front of them was created by Ji Tianqing's divine ability, so the space was extremely chaotic. The void was boundless, and there was nothing to refer to. One would definitely get lost. Therefore, it was very difficult to escape after falling into an unfamiliar and chaotic void. Unfortunately, the Golden Dragon Domain Master's figure gradually drifted away, and he couldn't hear Jing Feihong's shout. Of course, Jing Feihong didn't have the chance to say anything. Ji Tianqing had already arrived. He silently raised the sword of burial of heaven and slashed down. "Stop. I admit defeat." Jing Feihong knew that there was no way to escape, and that he was no match for Ji Tianqing, so he simply raised his hand and admitted defeat. However, Ji Tianqing turned a deaf ear to him and continued to slash down with the sword of burial of heaven. The huge divine sword that could split heaven and earth instantly engulfed Jing Feihong's figure. You! Jing Feihong was terrified. His eyes widened in despair, and he couldn't help but curse. However, before he could say a word, he was hit by the huge divine sword. His divine body was cut in half, and divine blood splattered everywhere. With just one slash, Jing Feihong's divine body was destroyed, and his divine spark was severely damaged. Swoosh! Jing Feihong's divine spark escaped from his body, flickering with divine light as it slanted and fled into the distance. Ji Tianqing chased after him with his sword and slashed a few more times. At this moment, Jing Feihong was in complete despair. He suddenly understood why the Golden Dragon Domain Master insisted on teleporting away, even though he knew that he would get lost in the void. That's right. If he fell into Ji Tianqing's hands, he would definitely die. If he entered the dark and boundless void, he might still have a chance of survival. Even if there was only a 1% or 1% chance, it was still better than being killed by Ji Tianqing on the spot. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Jing Feihong felt darkness descend upon him. Everything was over. Boom! The crisp sound of something shattering could be heard from afar. Jing Feihong's godhead was shattered on the spot, turning into a dozen or so fragments that scattered in the night sky. A middle divine king, the ruler of Yunyang region, had fallen just like that. His death was very ordinary, and there was nothing shocking, sensational, or exciting about it. When Jing Feihong was alive, he had fantasized many times about becoming a high deity king in the future. He even wanted to break through to the God Emperor realm. But he never would have thought that he would actually die under the sword of a human divine king when he was just a middle divine king. Shwa! Ji Tianqing shot out a golden light that enveloped Jing Feihong's godhead fragment and spatial ring. To him, the most valuable and desirable item now was the godhead fragment of a divine king master. Next were emperor-level divine weapons, emperor-level divine pills, materials, and divine king-level treasures. After putting away Jing Feihong's godhead fragment and spatial ring, Ji Tianqing looked at the spatial fault again. He realized that the dark void that spanned hundreds of miles was quickly mending itself. It could not be helped. That was only a void zone that had appeared because he had used a skill to slice through space. The spatial barrier in the power of the God Realm's world would naturally mend the gaps and loopholes. The dark void was only 60 miles wide now. The Golden Dragon region's ruler's figure had been swallowed by the darkness and had long since disappeared. Ji Tianqing frowned and muttered to himself regretfully, "This fellow is quite decisive." Once he saw that the situation was not right, he would rather commit suicide by jumping into the chaotic void than fall into my hands. What a pity. If only I could get his godhead fragment. Under his gaze, the wall of golden light that spanned thousands of miles disappeared. The pitch-black spatial fault was quickly mending itself as well. The world regained its tranquility. The intense divine power aura in the night sky dissipated as well. Yank, Chao Qingyu, and Lan kept their divine weapons and flew to Ji Tianqing's side. They did not speak. Only Chao Qingyu and Yank looked at him with odd expressions, as if they had something to say. Ji Tianqing glanced at them and raised his eyebrows, asking, "Do the two of you have something to say to me?" Both of them nodded in unison. Yank was more impatient and straightforward. He took the initiative to ask, "My lord, region ruler Yunyang has admitted defeat and surrendered just now. Didn't you hear him?" "I'm not deaf." "Of course, I heard him," Ji Tianqing answered calmly. "Then why did you kill him?" Yank was stunned, very confused. Ji Tianqing frowned and looked at him from the corner of his eyes, asking in return, "What? Are you pleading on his behalf? If I don't kill him, am I supposed to let him go?" Chao Qingyu quickly nudged Yank, reminding him not to spout nonsense. It was a pity that he was too short. Yank was 100 feet tall, so he could only stab Yank's calf. Chao Qingyu quickly explained to Ji Tianqing, young master, Yank meant that Jing Feihong was a mid-level divine king after all. His abilities and methods were not ordinary. Since he had admitted defeat and surrendered, why didn't you spare his life and take him for your own use? With another mid-level divine king as your guard and follower, our forces would be strengthened greatly. Before he could finish, Ji Tianqing interrupted him with a wave of his hand. I guessed that you would think so, but it's unrealistic. First of all, Jing Feihong is a region ruler. How could he be willing to be my follower and guard? Even if I were to use some method to control him, he would try to escape or contact someone else to save him. Yank couldn't help but mutter, but I'm also a region ruler. Aren't I still following you? Ji Tianqing rolled his eyes at him and sneered, your situation is rather special. First, you are far away from the primal chaos continent. Second, you are simple-minded. Unlike Jing Feihong, you are normal. Yank was speechless. He didn't know how to refute, and even felt a little ashamed. Ji Tianqing continued, secondly, I want to strengthen my forces and have more companions and friends. But I won't take in just anyone. 4 people like Jing Feihong and the region ruler of the Golden Dragon region, it's impossible. Yank immediately heaved a sigh of relief. He was secretly delighted and muttered, if that's the case, I still have some redeeming qualities. Otherwise, how could my lord have taken a fancy to me? Hearing his words, Ji Tianqing, Chao Qingyu, and Lan all looked at him with strange expressions. Ji Tianqing couldn't help but sigh. He shook his head and said, I only took you in because I pitied you. Also, this has something to do with the Rock tribe. You have to thank your father, Yank received another blow, but he wasn't depressed. Instead, he was excited. He asked expectantly, my lord, you mean, that divine king of the sword who fought with my father and uncle back then had a deep relationship with you? Chapter 34:13. A long time ago, Yank had guessed that Ji Tianqing was the divine king of the sword Dao. But that was 1,000 years ago. At that time, the divine king of the sword Dao was already comparable to a 7th-stage divine king. And Ji Tianqing had just broken through to the divine king realm not long ago. This was something everyone knew. Therefore, Yank judged that Ji Tianqing was not the divine king of the sword Dao, but should have a close relationship with him. Unfortunately, Ji Tianqing never mentioned these things again. Yank also tried to inquire about Ji Tianqing's specific situation, but Ji Tianqing avoided answering. Now, Ji Tianqing finally brought up the past again. Yank was suddenly filled with excitement and anticipation. He could not help but get to the bottom of it, wanting to find out the truth. However, Ji Tianqing avoided answering and changed the topic. There is another important reason why I did not take Jing Feihong in. This person's identity is special. Not only did he meet the divine ambassador of Haotian, when the Shura god emperor first took control of the boundless heaven continent and proclaimed himself as the emperor, he also met the Shura god emperor. It is said that the Shura god emperor used some kind of magical means to leave a mark in the body of each region master. In this way, the Shura god emperor could know the location and movements of each region master without leaving the house. It was also because of this that the Shura god emperor could go into seclusion in peace and not show up for 1,000 years. Even the various affairs of the boundless heaven continent were handed over to his deputies and the divine ambassadors to handle. Hearing this, Chao Qingyu understood his meaning and nodded. Young master means, if you take Jing Feihong in, even if he does not do anything and does not try to escape, our whereabouts will be exposed. Once the divine ambassadors report this to the Shura god emperor, the Shura god emperor may find us through Jing Feihong. Exactly. Ji Tianqing nodded and said calmly, with our current strength, we can't do whatever we want in the boundless heaven continent, and we don't have the qualifications to contend with the Azura god emperor. Therefore, I could only kill Jing Feihong. I see. Chao Qingyu nodded and said worriedly, but you killed Jing Feihong, forced the region master of Golden Dragon to commit suicide, and even injured Oracle Haotian. This matter is bound to blow up and alert more Haotian divine envoys to besiege us. Even the Shura God Emperor might find out about this and personally kill us. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said expressionlessly, what you said is possible, so we have to leave here as soon as possible, just in case. Furthermore, if there's nothing, let's not delay and leave the boundless heaven continent as soon as possible. Hearing these two sentences, the atmosphere immediately became tense. Chao Qingyu, Yank, and Lan Er's expressions were somewhat grave, frowning. No matter what, we have already offended two region masters, Oracle Haotian, and the Shura God Emperor. Yes. One region master was killed, the other went missing, and even the Oracle escaped with serious injuries. This enmity has been formed and can't be resolved. Compared to hundreds of region masters, dozens of Haotian divine envoys, and the high and mighty Shura God Emperor, we are too insignificant. Other than leaving the boundless heaven continent as soon as possible, we have no other choice. At the thought of offending the Shura God Emperor and being hunted down by many divine kings, the three of them were depressed and full of worry. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing advised, don't worry too much, the situation shouldn't be that bad. For the past 1,000 years, the boundless heaven continent has been very peaceful and stable. Therefore, the Shura God Emperor was relieved to hand over power to others and sent oracles to patrol the world. Normally, the Shura God Emperor would definitely be in closed-door cultivation, researching peak divine Tao. He would be in closed-door cultivation for decades, centuries. How would those oracles dare to disturb him? Don't worry, in the short term, the Shura God Emperor won't show his face. Even if there are divine king powerhouses coming to take revenge, it will only be some region masters and oracles. Hearing him say so, Yank and Lana were slightly relieved. Chao Qingyu nodded in agreement and said, this matter isn't a small one, but it isn't a big one either. After Divine King's stellar aspect escapes, he will definitely find other oracles for help and absolutely won't easily report to the Shura God Emperor. Otherwise, disturbing the Shura God Emperor's cultivation over such a small matter will only anger the Shura God Emperor, and also prove that Divine King's stellar aspect doesn't have the ability means. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, it's good that you all understand. Let's continue on our way. Chao Qingyu took out the Azure Jade Divine Warship. Everyone boarded the Divine Warship one after another. Very soon, the Divine Warship flew into the night sky, flying south at lightning speed. 2 hours later, more than 20 injured Divine Lords arrived at the battlefield, panting. These people were the high-ranking Divine Lords that Jing Feihong and the Golden Dragon Region Master had gathered. They were also the survivors of the 100 Divine Lords. They were relatively weak and had traveled too slowly. They had only just arrived. Originally, the group was flying across the night sky in a grandiose manner, preparing to continue their pursuit south. However, the few Divine Lords flying at the front of the group suddenly discovered the remnant aura of divine power in the air. Furthermore, the area within 5,000 kilometers was in ruins, leaving behind traces of a great battle. Stop! A great battle happened here. Could these be traces of the battle between the Region Master and those bastards? Don't be in such a hurry. Let's see what happened. Hence, the 20-odd Divine Lords stopped and observed the battlefield, searching for clues and traces. Soon, someone found fragments of armor in the ruins, as well as fragments of divine weapons. The Divine Lords all found something and hurriedly gathered together, piecing the fragments together. When everyone managed to find half a broken sword and a piece of broken armor, two divine monarchs suddenly let out a cry of surprise. Oh my God! Isn't this the armor that our Region Master wore and the divine sword that he used? It really is. Could it be that our Region Master has already? The two Divine Lords who exclaimed were both from the Cloud region. Then, someone at the edge of the battlefield exclaimed again, Oh my God! How could this be? It's the Region Master. The Region Master has passed away. I can't believe that the Region Master has actually passed away. The exclamations of the Divine Lords were filled with shock and fear. More than a dozen Divine Lords were attracted and hurried over to check the situation. In the ruins at the edge of the battlefield, a few Divine Lords were gathered in a circle, staring at a corpse with different expressions. To be precise, it was only half a corpse, and the body was incomplete. Even so, they could tell that it was the Region Master, Jing Feihong, from the body's characteristics and clothing. The Divine Lords of the Cloud region were shocked, all of them looking pained, sad, and frightened. The Divine Lords of the Golden Dragon region were also looking terrible, feeling uneasy. After everyone exclaimed and discussed for a while, the Divine Lords of the Cloud region joined forces to search for Jing Feihong's remains and belongings. After doing this, everyone looked at each other in dismay, not knowing what to do. What should we do? Should we continue to chase? Even the Region Master has been killed. What are we still chasing for? Are we going to die? With our abilities, we are not qualified to interfere in the battle between the Divine Lords. The Book House Reading Website. Chapter 34:14. The 20 or so upper-level deity lords discussed for a while and unanimously decided not to pursue south. They could not catch up anyway. The deity kings had already flown far away. Besides, even Region Lord Yun Yang had died tragically in the war and had fallen here. Even if these upper-level deity lords caught up with the deity kings, they could only be cannon fodder. If that was the case, they might as well return to their respective territories as soon as possible. After all, their divine power was depleted and they were heavily injured. They urgently needed to go into seclusion to recuperate. Furthermore, Region Lord Yun Yang had already fallen. The deity lords of Yun Yang region were leaderless. It was meaningless to continue the pursuit. They collected Jing Feihong's remains and belongings and organized them together, preparing to send them back to Yun Yang region. After making up their minds, the deity lords of Yun Yang region turned and left. Only the deity lords of Golden Dragon region were left. They lingered on the battlefield for a while. Their hearts were heavy as they muttered in their hearts, even Region Lord Yun Yang has fallen. What about our Region Lord? Could he have fallen as well? Although we didn't see any remains or belongings of the Region Lord on the battlefield, the Region Lord's strength was not inferior to his. However, the Territorial Lord's ability was not much stronger than Territorial Lord Yun Yang's. He must be in a perilous situation, however, it's useless even if we worry. The deity lords discussed for a while and decided to follow the example of the deity lords of Yun Yang region. They turned and left to recuperate. After the deity lords had left, the ruined battlefield regained its peace. The long night finally passed. 6 hours later, dawn came. At this moment, an explosive piece of news spread throughout the Golden Dragon region. It was said that a few foreign deity kings had invaded the Golden Dragon region and committed crimes and massacred. The Region Lord of Golden Dragon region was no match for them, so he invited God's messenger Haotian and Region Lord Yun Yang to join forces against the foreign deity kings. Unexpectedly, both sides fought for a long time and chased for millions of miles, but there was no result. On the other hand, Region Lord Yun Yang had died in the battle and had fallen. As for the Region Lord of Golden Dragon region and God's messenger Haotian, their whereabouts were unknown. Of course, no one knew if the foreign deity kings had been executed. Once the news was out, it caused a huge commotion in the Golden Dragon region and was widely spread by countless people. Friends, please pay attention to the rest of your eyes after reading for a long time. 00 recommended reading. Many people were stunned when they heard the news. They did not know what was going on with Oracle Haotian, nor did they believe that the two domain masters would personally deal with those foreign immortal kings. But this news was spread by several high divine lords. Those few high divine lords were all pillars of support in their respective empires, overlord-level existences of a region. What they said was absolutely true. Everyone had no choice but to believe it. After the messenger's explanation, many people knew that the oracle of God Emperor Haotian was above the region master. He was the loyal guard of His Majesty God Emperor, patrolling the whole continent for His Majesty God Emperor. Only then did everyone realize how serious this matter was, and how powerful those foreign race god kings were. After all, even divine envoy Haotian had failed to kill those foreign race divine kings. The high and mighty territorial ruler Yun Yang had actually sacrificed himself in the war. This was simply too terrifying and unbelievable. That was a great battle between several god-king powerhouses. Such a major event had not happened in the entire Golden Dragon region for nearly 1,000 years. Those who heard the news were shocked and agitated, and at the same time, they shared and spread the news to others. As a result, the news spread rapidly in all directions as if it had grown wings, and was about to engulf the entire Golden Dragon region. In fact, it was far more than that. 20 days later, not only did the news spread throughout the Golden Dragon region, but it was also known by many empires and powerful forces. Even the neighboring Yunyang region was spreading the news like wildfire. In particular, the news of the region master's death was like a heavy bomb, blowing up the entire Yunyang region and stirring up a storm. The first reaction of countless empires, forces, and experts when they heard the news was disbelief. However, as more and more news came and described the whole matter more clearly, those people had no choice but to believe it. Most importantly, a dozen divine lords had brought back the region master's remains and belongings. They had joined forces to escort the remains and belongings to the region master's palace. When the news spread, the evidence was conclusive and irrefutable. Instantly, the entire Yunyang territory was in mourning, shrouded in a thick haze. Many empires, divine nations, and forces were solemn and sorrowful, mourning the fall of territory Lord Yunyang. And friends, please pay attention to the rest of your eyes after reading for a long time. 00 recommended reading, BSP, the experts were worried. Now that the region lord had fallen, Yunyang region was without a leader. What should they do next? There was no news from divine envoy Haotian, the domain master of Golden Dragon Domain, and the foreign divine kings. What if the deity kings of the foreign tribes returned to the Yunyang region and went on a killing spree? Of course, this was the reaction of most normal people. There were also a few top experts and emperors of top empires who had other thoughts. Not long ago, the domain lord's deputy had fallen. Now that the region lord had been killed, the entire Yunyang domain was without a ruler. Did this mean that they had a chance to seize the throne? After all, the region could not be without a ruler for even a day. They were doing this for the sake of the people of Yunyang domain. When they seized the position of the region lord and stabilized the situation, even if divine envoy Haotian and the Shura god emperor knew about it, it would not affect them much. After all, the emperor was far away and the Shura god emperor was high and mighty. It was impossible for him to come to Yunyang region personally and appoint someone as the region lord. The Shura god emperor would not care who became the region lord as long as the new region lord was loyal to him and maintained the peace and stability of Yunyang region. With such thoughts in mind, the emperors of several empires and a few top divine emperors began to plan and prepare in secret, gradually taking action. As a result, Yunyang territory, which was already in a state of chaos and uncertainty, became even more turbulent. It was also at this time. Sanchuan region, which was adjacent to the Golden Dragon domain, was the territory of divine King Yiqing. Yiqing lived in the palace all year round, hanging high above the sea of clouds and overlooking the mountains and rivers of Sanchuan region. It was evening. The light golden afterglow of the setting sun spilled on the sea of clouds, illuminating the palace with colorful radiance. The divine palace, which was originally very majestic and solemn, also appeared quiet and peaceful under the setting sun. However, this tranquility and peace was broken by an honorable guest. Of course, this guest only had a high status and status. His current state was not flattering at all. He was very disheveled. Although he was 100 feet tall and had a burly body, his appearance was domineering and majestic. However, his back was hunched and his body was as thin as firewood. His face and eyes were dim and his breathing was chaotic. The bronze armor he wore had long been shattered, and his body was covered with crisscrossing wounds, looking hideous and terrifying. Chapter 34:15. Without a doubt. This travel-worn, wretched-looking god was none other than God King Stellar Aspect. Not long after he escaped the heaven-vanquishing sword array and shook off Ji Tianqing, his burning blood-soul transformation state ended. Back then, he suffered a backlash. His body shrank drastically, his vitality waned, and his strength was extremely weak. In addition, he was so severely injured that he nearly fainted and fell from the sky. Thankfully, he had a strong will and consumed a few king-level divine pills in time, temporarily suppressing his injuries. Then, he fled southeast without stopping, heading straight for the Sanchuan region. He was worried that Ji Tianqing would pursue him, so he could only leave the Golden Dragon region as soon as possible and find a secluded place to heal. He was most familiar with the Sanchuan region's periphery. He had known Sanchuan region Lord Yi Qing for many years. Furthermore, he had helped Sanchuan region Lord Yi Qing resolve a thorny matter not long ago. At such a critical juncture, the first thing he thought of was to head to the Sanchuan region to heal. A journey that should have taken him slightly more than 10 days took him 20 days in his weakened state. Thankfully, he dragged his weak and injured body back to Sanchuan region Lord's divine palace. A few hours ago, he had contacted Sanchuan region Lord Yi Qing. At that moment, God King Stellar Aspect had just landed at the entrance of the divine palace. Yi Qing was already waiting there. Yi Qing was a white-haired elder dressed in purple robes. He looked thin, but his aura and eyes were extremely sharp. Of course, he still had to maintain an appropriate level of respect in front of God King Stellar Aspect. Yi Qing jumped in fright when he suddenly saw God King Stellar Aspect's wretched state. He hurriedly bowed in greeting. "Your subordinate, Yi Qing, greets Lord Divine Envoy." "Divine Envoy Stellar Aspect, how did you end up so severely injured? Who injured you? This shouldn't have happened, and it's impossible." As he spoke, Yi Qing hurriedly went forward to help God King Stellar Aspect up. God King Stellar Aspect waved his hand and said while panting, "There's no need to help me. This king can still walk on his own. This isn't the place to talk. Let's go in and talk." "Good." Yi Qing quickly nodded and extended his hand to make an inviting gesture. "Sir Divine Envoy, please follow me." He led God King Stellar Aspect into the divine palace, passed through 2 courtyards and a few corridors before entering a dimly lit hall. There was not a single person in the hall. The floor and walls were inlaid with countless divine stones that were densely engraved with array patterns. Yi Qing closed the palace's door and waved his hand to activate the palace's array. He said to Astral Aspect, "Lord Divine Envoy, this is where I usually cultivate in seclusion and recuperate. Hurry up and go into the array to recuperate. We'll talk about it slowly." Godly King Stellar Aspect could not have asked for more. He did not exchange pleasantries with Yi Qing as he hurriedly sat in the middle of the divine array. After consuming a few divine pills, he began to circulate his energy for treatment. Yi Qing waited for 15 minutes and waited for Stellar Aspect's condition to stabilize before asking, "Lord Divine Envoy, I heard news from the neighboring Golden Dragon region yesterday. He said that you took Jing Feihong and the Golden Dragon realm ruler to the Golden Dragon Abyss to kill those foreign god kings. In the end, Jing Feihong was killed in the battle, and the Golden Dragon region master was nowhere to be found. Lord Divine Envoy, what's going on? Those foreign god kings are actually that powerful?" Godly King's stellar aspect could multitask, circulating his energy to treat his injuries while diverting his attention to chat with Yi Qing. He snorted coldly with a heart filled with hatred as he said in a sinister tone, "This king was too careless this time. I really did not expect that punk's strength to be so powerful." Of course, Jing Feihong and the Golden Dragon Region Master's performance also exceeded this king's expectations. "I never expected their strength and means to be so weak despite being the lords of a region. How disappointing." Yi Qing sneered inwardly but feigned shock and anxiety on the surface. In the surrounding few regions, the Golden Dragon Region Master and Jing Feihong's strength is relatively weak. It will indeed disappoint Lord Divine Envoy. However, one of them perished in the battle, while the other went missing. It's indeed a pity. It's all those foreign god kings' fault. They're too detestable. They deserve to die. Godly King's stellar aspect immediately frowned and could not help but ask, "One perished on the spot, while the other went missing? Who was killed? And who went missing?" Yi Qing was stunned for a moment before asking with a frown, "Lord Divine Envoy, weren't you present at the battle? How could you not know about this?" Godly King's stellar aspect's face immediately turned red as a look of embarrassment flashed across his eyes. However, he could not tell Yi Qing that he fled without looking back, completely ignoring the Golden Dragon Region Master and Jing Feihong's fates. That would be too embarrassing. Therefore, Godly King's stellar aspect changed his explanation. The situation back then was rather complicated. It's not something that can be explained in a few words. Those foreign race god kings had more people, and they were crafty and cunning. Therefore, we split up. This king did not know about this matter. Yi Qing was an old fox that had lived for 30,000 years. His heart was as clear as a mirror. He roughly guessed the moment he saw Godly King's stellar aspect's reaction. He just did not expose it. Sigh. No wonder the Golden Dragon Region Master sent me a message back then, requesting me to help him but did not explain what was going on. If I knew that things would be so troublesome, I would have agreed to help with Lord Divine Envoy. Now that I think about it, it's too late for regrets. Yi Qing pretended to be vexed and remorseful, pounding his chest and stamping his feet in grief. Godly King's stellar aspect waved his hand and persuaded, "You can't be blamed for this. After this king received the Golden Dragon Region Master's distress message, I did not take it seriously and did not inform you. Forget it, let's not talk about this first. You said earlier that the matter has already spread in the Golden Dragon region. What's the situation now? What rumors are there outside?" Godly King's stellar aspect knew that there were thousands of divine lords watching the battle and that the matter would definitely spread. However, he did not expect that the news would spread so quickly. Moreover, he would lose so miserably and miserably. Yi Qing said indignantly, "The current Golden Dragon region and Cloud Yang region have long been abuzz with the news, causing everyone to be in a state of panic. I don't know which busybodies want the world to be in chaos, but they're simply fabricating nonsense on the spot. They're spreading rumors that Lord Divine Envoy and the two region masters were no match for those foreign god kings. Not only has Region Master Yun Yang been killed, but the Golden Dragon Region Master has also gone missing. Even you have escaped with heavy injuries. Now that the two regions are leaderless, not only are the empires and their people panicking, there are also some empires and forces that have seized the opportunity to stir up trouble, vainly attempting to seize the authority of the entire region. Because of this, internal strife of varying scales has erupted in both Cloud Yang and Golden Dragon regions, resulting in many wars." Before Yi Qing could finish, Godly King's stellar aspect's expression changed as he shouted coldly in embarrassment and anger, "Damn it! Those fellows who took the opportunity to stir up the people's hearts deserve to die as well. Yi Qing, this matter cannot spread any further. You must think of a way to suppress the news. You're the closest to Cloud Yang and Golden Dragon regions. You should think of a way to control the situation in the two regions. Chapter 34:16. Hearing God King Stellar Aspect's words, Yi Qin was overjoyed. When he learned that Cloud Yang and Golden Dragon regions were leaderless and in a state of chaos, he knew that his chance had come. He wanted to charge into the two regions with his troops and take over the reins. Whether it was controlling the two regions in place of the region lord or making a fortune, he would not miss it. However, he did not dare to act rashly and decided to see God King Stellar Aspect's attitude first. Now that God King Stellar Aspect had taken the initiative to ask him to suppress the situation, it was naturally for the best. After all, it was perfectly justifiable. Even if he took over the two regions and plundered their wealth and resources, it would be under orders. While he was secretly delighted, Yi Qin pretended to be overwhelmed by the favor. "Thank you, Lord Divine Envoy, for your trust and regard. This subordinate is afraid that I am not capable enough to handle such a serious matter." How could God King Stellar Aspect not understand that Yi Qin was acting? However, he was unwilling to expose him. With a wave of his hand, he said, "If this king says you can, you can. Stop delaying and hesitating. You are the most suitable person to handle this matter. You must stabilize Cloud Yang and Golden Dragon regions in the shortest time possible. You must not cause any more trouble. Otherwise, this king will not be able to answer to His Holiness the God Emperor." Yi Qin quickly cupped his fists and bowed, saying, "In that case, this subordinate can only comply. Rest assured, Lord Divine Envoy. This subordinate will do his best to settle this matter as soon as possible. Not only will this subordinate need to pacify the two regions, but I will also seal and suppress the news, preventing it from spreading out." "Very well. You may go." God King Stellar Aspect nodded. Yi Qin bowed and retreated, reminding, "Then this subordinate will take his leave. Lord Divine Envoy, please recuperate here in peace." God King Stellar Aspect did not say anything else. He only nodded and closed his eyes to recuperate. Yi Qin quickly left the hall and went to gather his men. After gathering his men, he set off impatiently, heading straight for Cloud Yang region. Although Golden Dragon region was closer, Golden Dragon region lord had only gone missing. It was not confirmed whether he was dead or alive. However, region lord Yun Yang's death was confirmed. He could take over the reins without worry. At the same time, inside the palace, Godly King Stellar Aspect opened his eyes, temporarily ending his recuperation. With a gloomy face, he stared at the dark corner of the wall. His eyes were filled with malevolence and hatred as he viciously cursed, "Tianqing, you damned beast. Although I don't care about the lives of the Golden Dragon Domain's ruler and Jing Feihong, I still don't care about them. But when I brought them to kill Tianqing, I was seriously injured and escaped. Of the two area masters, one died and the other went missing. Now that the outside world is in an uproar, this prince will definitely become the laughingstock of the world. How could the divine envoy of God Emperor Haotian be defeated by a few divine kings of the alien tribes? What a joke! What a disgrace to His Majesty!" Divine King Xingxiang was both embarrassed and furious. He wished he could tear Ji Tianqing into pieces and grind his bones to dust. However, in his current state, his combat strength was less than 30% of his peak state. It was impossible for him to seek revenge on Ji Tianqing. He could only temporarily suppress his murderous intent and think of another way to take revenge. "No. Not only do I have to get Yi Qin to suppress the situation in the two regions, but I also have to capture and kill Tianqing and company as soon as possible. This is the only way to wash away this king's shame and humiliation and give the people an explanation. However, who should I seek help from to hunt down those bastards?" On the way back to the Sanchuan region, Godly King Stellar Aspect had thought of this problem. His first thought was that he absolutely could not report this matter to the Azura God Emperor. First of all, although this matter appeared very serious, it was not a big deal to the Azura God Emperor. Now, the Azura God Emperor was in seclusion, cultivating bitterly to comprehend the supreme divine Tao. He absolutely could not be disturbed. Furthermore, if Godly King Stellar Aspect could not even handle this matter properly and had to trouble the Azura God Emperor to take action personally, it would only prove his incompetence. When the time came, the Azura God Emperor would dismiss him in a fit of anger. He would then be too deep to cry. Back then, he had given up the position of a region's lord and made a huge sacrifice in order to become divine envoy Haotian. Therefore, he absolutely could not alarm the Azura God Emperor. He could only think of a solution himself. If I can't alarm His Holiness the God Emperor, then I can only seek the help of the other divine envoys. With their help, I can mobilize dozens of region lords and lay down an inescapable net. I can definitely capture Tianqing and company in one fell swoop. Godly King Stellar Aspect muttered to himself, his eyes flashing with killing intent as his heart was filled with anticipation. I still have to consider this matter at length and carefully consider it. As he circulated his energy to heal his injuries, he pondered with a frown, when I fled the battlefield, that bastard Tianqing did not pursue me. He should have gone to deal with the Golden Dragon Region Lord and Jing Feihong. In other words, he lost track of me and did not pursue me at all. They went south from the Cloud Yang region and passed by the Golden Dragon region. After this matter ends, they should continue south and even escape the boundless heaven continent as soon as possible. In that case, I have to immediately inform those region lords in the central region. Only with the joint efforts of many region lords can we find Tianqing's tracks and form an encirclement and ambush. When the time comes, I and the other divine envoys will rush over and personally kill him for revenge. Of course, there are 6 divine envoys who came with me to patrol the continent, each in charge of a region. Of the 6 divine envoys, 3 are further away and probably will not be able to rush over in time to help. I can only inform 3 divine envoys, and I only need the help of the 3 of them. With this thought, Godly King Stellar Aspect's train of thought immediately became clear. He hurriedly took out 30 communication jade slips and sent out one message after another. He first sent a message to the 3 divine envoys closest to him, explaining the situation and the severity of the matter to them and requesting their assistance. Then, he sent a message to the 20-odd region lords in the central region, ordering them to investigate Tianqing's tracks with all their might and to find a way to intercept and surround him. By the time he was done with these matters, 15 minutes had already passed. Only then did Godly King Stellar Aspect stop and focus on recuperating while waiting for the replies of the 3 divine envoys and the region lords. About 30 minutes later, the 3 divine envoys and the region lords replied to him one after another. The 3 divine envoys seemed somewhat unwilling and were definitely laughing behind his back at his lack of ability for him to suffer such a huge setback. But no matter what, the divine envoy's duty was to patrol the boundless heaven continent and maintain peace and stability. Godly King Stellar Aspect could not handle such a matter, so the 3 divine envoys had to help. Otherwise, if the matter really reached the ears of the Azura God Emperor, the 3 of them would be punished as well. The 20-odd region lords in the central region did not have any hesitation or apprehension. They simply obeyed the order and expressed their full cooperation. They would immediately take action and report to Godly King Stellar Aspect the moment they found traces of Ji Tianqing and company. After reading everyone's replies, Godly King Stellar Aspect heaved a sigh of relief and recuperated in peace. Chapter 34:17. Unknowingly, a turbulent undercurrent was stirred up in the central region of the boundless heaven continent. The masters of more than 20 domains mobilized their elite experts to search for Ji Tianqing and the others. They also ordered the empires to cooperate and strictly guard the entry and exit fortresses and borders of each domain. Countless experts and guards were on standby. Once they found Ji Tianqing's trace, they would immediately encircle and annihilate him. A vast net that covered more than 20 domains was quickly spreading. At the same time, the three heavenly gods' emissaries also rushed to the central region from different directions and were about to meet in a certain domain. Before this, every time they patrolled the boundless heaven continent, they dealt with some trivial matters. To them, these were all trivial matters that could not arouse their interest. However, as heavenly gods' emissaries, they had to carry out their missions. Now, they finally encountered an exciting event. The three heavenly gods' emissaries were full of anticipation, hoping to use this opportunity to perform meritorious deeds. Ji Tianxing and the others were unaware of the subtle changes in the situation. At this time, Chao Qingyu was steering the divine ship, flying across the sky at lightning speed, all the way south. They had already left the Golden Dragon domain and were crossing the Golden Domain. Traveling was very boring. Chao Qingyu steered the divine ship alone, and while traveling, he meditated to adjust his breathing and nourish his divine path foundation. Lin Shui, blood illusion god, and the others were cultivating in seclusion in the divine ship's secret chamber. Ji Tianxing brought Yank into the Jiutian Tenju Tower to cultivate in seclusion. Yank, Yunyao, Ji Ku, White Dragon, Wushuang, and the others were all cultivating under the bloody flame sacred tree. Everyone had sufficient cultivation resources and could absorb the power of the sacred tree, so their strength was improving rapidly. Ji Tianxing also sat under the sacred tree, cultivating in seclusion. Before this, he had already checked Jing Feihong's spatial ring and obtained a huge amount of spoils. Jing Feihong was the ruler of a region and had held power for nearly 10,000 years. Naturally, he had accumulated abundant resources and wealth. Even though he only had a set of armor and weapons, which were king-grade mediocre divine artifacts, and they had already been destroyed in the battle. However, there were still 2 sets of king-level low-level divine artifacts left in his interspatial ring, as well as a mountain of divine stones, divine elixirs, and other cultivation resources. Ji Tianxing took a look. Of the 2 sets of king-grade low-grade divine artifacts, only one of them was usable. He didn't plan to use it himself and planned to leave it for Yun Yao or Ji Ku. As for the other one, it was a flying scythe with chains attached to it. This was a strange weapon that very few people used. At the very least, the people around Ji Tianxing were all useful. Therefore, Ji Tianxing planned to smelt this king-grade god artifact and use the smelted materials to refine other god artifacts. Ji Tianxing sorted all kinds of divine stones, medicinal pills, materials, and all kinds of rare treasures, and put them into his space ring. Fortunately, he had refined his interspatial ring into a king-grade low-level divine artifact when he was free. The interspatial ring's internal space had been greatly upgraded, which was why it could store Jing Feihong's cultivation resources and treasures. Ji Tianxing made a rough estimate. The resources and treasures in Jing Feihong's interspatial ring were worth at least 600 billion divine stones. This was undoubtedly a shocking amount of wealth. However, Ji Tianxing's mood didn't fluctuate much. At his level, the joy brought about by material gains and resources had faded by a lot. Unless it was a huge gain or a pleasant surprise, such as a large batch of king-grade mediocre divine artifacts, materials, and treasures, he would only be pleasantly surprised. Just 600 billion divine stones worth of cultivation resources and treasures wasn't enough to excite him. In comparison, he was more interested in Jing Feihong's quintessence fragment. After tidying up Jing Feihong's interspatial ring, he took out Jing Feihong's quintessence fragment and began refining it. Time passed very quickly in the warped space. Only 10 days had passed in the outside world, but he had already cultivated for 500 days. During this period, he finished refining Jing Feihong's quintessence fragment. Not only did his divine power skyrocket, but his strength also improved greatly. He even refined 30 types of divine Tao laws. Therefore, the number of divine Tao laws he grasped reached as many as 430 types. Such a number was usually only achievable by a god-king like god-king stellar aspect. Without a doubt, Ji Tianxing's combat strength improved greatly again. After refining Jing Feihong's quintessence fragment, he consumed several divine fruits and large amounts of divine elixirs. He also expended vast amounts of origin stones and entered seclusion to cultivate for 2 years. After 2 years, his strength was even closer to the mid-stage second-level Divine King realm. At the same time, the heaven-punishing divine art's third-level cultivation method was also comprehended and deduced by him to be even more perfect, reaching minor success. With all these factors combined, his combat strength increased by roughly twofold. If he were to encounter God King's stellar aspect again, even if he fought one-on-one, victory was assured. Only then did he end his seclusion in satisfaction. He knew that Chao Qingyu was still on the road. Not taking the initiative to contact him indicated that everything was fine. Therefore, he was in no hurry to leave the warped space. He got up to observe the other situation. Circling the blood flame's sacred tree, he observed everyone and the 2 divine beasts. The results were gratifying. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, Ji Wushuang, White Dragon, Shen Hong, and Yang's strength increased greatly. Even Black Dragon and Qian Yu's strength increased substantially. Among these people, the weakest, Ji Wushuang, Black Dragon, and Qian Yu were god lords at the 5th and 6th level. Disregarding Yang, the strongest were Yun Yao and Ji Ku. Both of them had reached the 9th level Divine Lord realm and were not far from the threshold of the Divine King realm. Yun Yao reached the 9th level Divine Lord realm first. Now, she was already at the middle stage. And Ji Ku's improvement was slightly slower. He had just broken through to the 9th level Divine Lord realm not long ago. Logically speaking, this was good news that was gratifying. But after Ji Tianqing carefully observed Yun Yao's situation, he frowned, revealing a worried look. Because after Yun Yao reached the 9th level Divine Lord realm, the improvement of her strength became very slow. She no longer had her previous talent and comprehension ability, nor was she like a top genius. She was like an ordinary Divine Lord, her strength increasing was extremely difficult. At this rate, she needed at least 100 years before she could reach the peak of the Divine Lord realm. As for breaking through to the Divine King realm, it looked very uncertain. The chances were not high. This discovery made Ji Tianqing very puzzled. He thought to himself, this isn't right. Yao Yao was a martial arts genius to begin with. She also fused with goddess Yaoguang's memories and soul, so she should be a top genius. Breaking through to the Divine King realm should be very easy. But why would she lack stamina, talent, and comprehension ability? Could it be that she has some knot in her heart that hasn't been untied? Or could it be that she encountered a bottleneck and is unable to break through? Ji Tianqing was filled with worry. He used his divine sense to wake up the Yun Yao who was currently in closed seclusion and asked her about the specific situation. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 34:18. Coincidentally, Yun Yao was also confused and worried. Although she was cultivating in seclusion, her mind was not focused enough. She was also pondering what was going on. Hearing Ji Tianqing's divine sense voice transmission, she naturally woke up and hurriedly ended her cultivation. She had just opened her eyes when she saw Ji Tianqing sitting in front of her, looking at her with concern. Yao Yao, did you encounter some problem in your cultivation? Or is there something troubling you? Ji Tianqing stared at her and asked. Yun Yao shook her head gently and said in a gentle and calm voice, I have been cultivating in seclusion here for so many years. My strength has improved very quickly. What could be troubling me? But after I broke through to the 9th level Divine Lord realm, I did encounter some problems in my cultivation. Ji Tianqing hurriedly asked, what problem? Did you encounter a bottleneck? Or do you have doubts about cultivation methods, divine abilities, and laws? Logically speaking, with your talent and comprehension, these shouldn't have appeared, right? Yun Yao pursed her lips, the corners of her mouth curling into a bitter smile, and said, I don't know what's going on, but there's no problem that I can't understand. When I was cultivating in seclusion, my mind was clear and my mind was clear. I didn't feel that there was any problem. But I don't know why, but I keep feeling that something is missing. No matter how focused I am and how hard I cultivate, it's very difficult to improve my strength. My progress is very slow. This. Ji Tianqing was immediately at a loss for words. He frowned, not knowing how to answer. Yunyao asked with interest, Tianqing, how long did you stay in the 9th level Divine Lord realm? Did you have a problem like mine? How long did you use to break through to the Divine King realm? Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and answered, I didn't stay in the 9th level Divine Lord realm for long. I didn't have a problem like yours. I stayed for about 100 years. I tried a few times and successfully recovered to the Divine King realm. Is that so? Yunyao nodded to show that she understood. She said with a smile, that's right. Your identity is special and you have broken through once. Breaking through to the Divine King realm again is just starting over. Of course, it will be smooth. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked doubtfully, aren't you the same? Over 30,000 years ago, you were the mother of the human race. What mother of humanity? Don't talk nonsense. Yunyao rolled her eyes at him and explained, back then, I was the strongest and had the highest status among all human warriors. So, I was admired and worshipped by countless human warriors. At that time, there were tens of thousands of races in the god realm. The god race was especially powerful, followed by the demon race. The human race could only survive in the cracks. It was because of me and the protection of the many experts of the human race that the human race was able to gain a foothold in the god realm. At this point, Yunyao's expression became a little strange. She sighed and said, sigh. This is Goddess Yaoguang's experience, not the real me. Ji Tianqing naturally understood that Yunyao had only inherited Goddess Yaoguang's inheritance and memories. She was not the real Yaoguang. However, she had fused with Yaoguang's memories and soul. So, she was the reincarnation of Goddess Yaoguang. At this point, Ji Tianqing suddenly had a flash of inspiration. His eyes also became bright. Yao Yao, I remember that you have fused with 6 god pearls so far, right? Yunyao was stunned for a moment. Then, she nodded and said, yes. Ji Tianqing continued, however, Goddess Yaoguang's 7 souls turned into 7 god pearls and scattered in the world. There is still one more god pearl that we have never found. You have also failed to fuse with it. Do you feel that something is wrong? Like memory loss? Yunyao's body shook. She roughly understood what he meant. She quickly nodded and said, of course. I am still missing 1 god pearl. Of course, my memories are missing. My memories regarding Goddess Yaoguang's cultivation, life, and experiences in the God King realm are all blurry. Tianqing, could it be that you mean? Ji Tianqing hurriedly nodded and said in high spirits, I roughly guessed the reason. No wonder after you reached the 9th level Divine Lord realm, your talent and comprehension ability plummeted. Your strength improvement slowed down. If I didn't guess wrongly, it should be related to the 7th god pearl. Yunyao also nodded in agreement. She said in a low voice, I understand what you mean. After we find the 7th god pearl and I fuse with it, my 3 souls and 7 souls will be complete. At that time, I will possess Goddess Yaoguang's complete memories and inheritance. Only then can I successfully break through to the God King realm. Ji Tianqing said with a faint smile, it should be like this. Goddess Yaoguang was once a peak God King. If you fuse with the 7 god pearls, your 3 souls and 7 souls will recover completely. You will definitely break through to the God King realm easily. In fact, you will definitely return to the peak God King realm. Yunyao's mood was also a little excited and expectant. But she thought of another problem and immediately quieted down. But, how do we know where the 7 God pearls are? Are they left behind in the 5 elements world? Or in the divine world? Or have they wandered to the dragon realm? Ji Tianxing held her hands and encouraged with a smile, Yao Yao, don't worry. Didn't I ascend with the 5 elements world? If the God pearls are left in the 5 elements world, then I can return to the 5 elements world at any time and carefully search for them. If the God pearls are in the divine world, then even if I search to the ends of the earth, I will find them. Even if the God pearls are in the dragon realm, I will also make a trip to the dragon realm sooner or later. Not only to find Wuhan, but also to help you find the God pearls. Hearing him say so, Yunyao was indeed much more relieved. She nodded and said, Amen, I believe you. It's just that this way, you will be delayed for a long time. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said indifferently, in any case, I have returned to the God King realm. No matter how hard I cultivate, it will take many years to advance one level. I have plenty of time to help you find the God pearls. The knot in Yunyao's heart was untied. All the worries and doubts in her heart dissipated. Ji Tianxing chatted with her for a long time. Only then did he get up and leave. Alright, Yao Yao, don't think too much. Focus on cultivating in seclusion. I will try to find the God pearls. You also have to reach the peak of the God monarch realm as soon as possible. The day I find the God pearls will be the day you break through to the God King realm. Yunyao nodded to show that she understood. She watched as he turned and left. Then, she continued to cultivate in seclusion. Ji Tianxing left the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes Tower and returned to the Green Jade Divine Ship. He walked out of the secret room. First, he went to the control room to see Chao Qingyu and asked him about the situation. After knowing that Chao Qingyu had been on the road for 1.5 months and had just entered the Fire Mulberry domain, he was relieved. Then, he went to see Lin Shui, Shui Huan, Nia Feiyun, left emissary Jin and the others. Everyone was in the secret rooms of the divine ship. They were focused on cultivating. Although they had made a fortune after following Ji Tianxing, they did not lack cultivation resources at all. However, their secret rooms were still a little simple. The effect of their cultivation was far inferior to those people in the distorted spacetime. Ji Tianxing looked around and decided to help them modify their secret rooms. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 34:19. This Azure Jade Divine Warship was built by Chao Qingyu after painstakingly collecting materials when he was traveling to various continents. Even though he had spent more than 100 years, countless efforts, and king-level materials, he was still a lowly alchemist. However, he was only a lesser divine blacksmith after all. Moreover, he was a self-taught genius without any guidance from a famous teacher. His Azure Jade Divine Warship was naturally an unattainable super warship in the eyes of heaven gods and Sir gods. However, in the eyes of godly king experts, it was just an ordinary item. There was nothing to praise about it. Moreover, when Chao Qingyu built this divine warship, he paid more attention to its defense, attack power, and speed. As for the internal facilities of the divine warship, the design was relatively simple. Especially the dozen or so secret rooms, there were only a few king-level divine arrays set up to assist in cultivation. To Lin Shui, Sir God Blood Illusion, Nia Feiyun, and the rest, this was already a very good condition. After all, there were king-level divine arrays operating continuously to help them replenish their divine power. This was something they had never dared to imagine before. However, in Ji Tianxing's eyes, these secret rooms were still too simple and crude. If he were to modify these secret rooms, he would at least add a few mid-grade king-level divine arrays, increasing the efficiency of everyone's cultivation by 3 to 4 times. However, that was too troublesome and would consume a lot of time. Therefore, Ji Tianxing deliberated for a while and decided to choose the simplest and most effective method. That was to add a new time divine formation in every secret room. That's right. It was to use a time divine array to change the flow of time in the secret room. Just like the distorted spacetime in Jiutian Tenju Tower, the flow of time was 50 times faster than the outside world. Therefore, Ji Tianqing and his friends could cultivate in there with extremely powerful effects. Only 1 year had passed in the outside world, but they could cultivate in seclusion in the distorted spacetime for 50 years. Because of this, his and Yun Yao's growth was too fast in Chao Qingyu and Lan Er's eyes. Even though Ji Tianqing had not mastered the time laws. However, in his previous life, he had cultivated a few divine powers and mastered a few divine arrays that could change the flow of time. Not only could he speed up the flow of time, but he could also slow it down. In fact, when his power recovered to peak Godly King, he could even stop time. Of course, it only stopped for a short period of time in a relatively small area. In the past, before Ji Tianqing recovered to the God King realm, it was impossible for him to use these sacred arts and array formations. Things were different now. His strength and foundation were sufficient. Not only could he use a divine ability like the spacetime blade, but he could also set up an array formation that sped up time. After making up his mind, he immediately took action. He first entered Lan Er's secret chamber. After explaining the purpose of his visit, he cast a spell and began to set up the formation. Lan Er, who was watching from the side, couldn't help but feel shocked and expectant when she saw him shoot out tens of thousands of dazzling divine lights and form a profound and mysterious divine seal. Fortunately, the secret chamber wasn't big, only having a radius of 10 feet. Ji Tianqing only used 1 day to complete the setup of the Time God Array. After the divine array was activated, an invisible divine power enveloped the entire secret chamber, causing time to flow faster. Lan Er could clearly sense that the flow of time was 8 times faster than before. She was instantly filled with shock and disbelief. Oh my God! Young Master actually grasped the power of time and could accelerate time by 8 times. This way, only 1 day has passed in the outside world, and I can cultivate here for 8 days. That's great. Young Master's means are amazing. Lan Er is in awe. Lan Er was filled with joy and she was excited. She knew clearly that Ji Tianqing helping her set up the Time God Array was more precious than giving her a king-level divine weapon. After all, her cultivation efficiency would increase by 8 times in the future. No amount of resources or wealth could exchange for that. Ji Tianqing only smiled and nodded but didn't say anything. After he taught her how to open and close the Time God Array, he left the secret chamber. Then, he set up a Time God Array in every secret chamber for Lin Shui, Sir God Blood Illusion, Left Emissary Jean, Blood Dragon Right Emissary and the others. When he finished setting up the Time God Array, everyone felt the acceleration of time and they were overjoyed, shocked and excited. Especially Lin Shui's reaction, she was even more excited than Lan Er. Of course, there were 2 people who were more interesting. They were Left Emissary Jean and Nie Fei Yun. When Ji Tianqing entered their secret chambers, they were cultivating in seclusion and they didn't know what was happening in the outside world. As a result, Ji Tianqing spent a day to set up the Time God Array in the secret chambers but they didn't react at all. When everyone's secret chambers had an additional Time God Array, it was already 6 days later. Before Ji Tianqing left, he gave everyone a few divine fruits. The divine fruits were borne by the Crimson Flame sacred tree and they were all ripe. After consumption, it could increase one's blood qi, essence and soul and strengthen one's divine body and divine soul. These divine fruits were greatly beneficial to divine king powerhouses. To the few divine lords, they were even super-nourishing medicines. Lan Er, Shui Huan, Left Emissary Jean, Blood Dragon and the others bowed and thanked him gratefully. Not only did Lin Shui express her gratitude excitedly, she was also very touched. The way she looked at Ji Tianqing changed. In the past 6 months, Ji Tianqing didn't spend much time with her. Seeing the subtle changes in her eyes as if she had a lot to say, Ji Tianqing hurriedly found an excuse to slip away. Lin Shui had been brewing her emotions for a long time. She could only swallow the words that she had been holding back and continue to cultivate unhappily. Ji Tianqing helped everyone modify the secret chambers and gave them divine fruits. He wanted to help them improve their strength quickly. After all, their situation would be even more dangerous in the future. Although he didn't see any Sir Gods who had the potential to break through to King Gods. However, it was also very necessary to help them become peak Sir Gods as soon as possible. After dealing with this matter, Ji Tianqing returned to the secret chamber and started to study the heaven-mending pearl and the five elements world. It had been 10 years since he ascended to the God realm. The five elements world had always been stored in the heaven-mending pearl. He hadn't carefully observed it yet. Of course, with his current strength, he couldn't store the five elements world in his body. He could only store it in the heaven-mending pearl. Ji Tianqing returned to the distorted space and activated the heaven-mending pearl. Swoosh! A white divine pearl the size of a thumb flew out of his mind and floated in front of him. He stared at the heaven-mending pearl and observed it for a moment, then entered it. Swoosh! With a flash of light, Ji Tianqing entered the heaven-mending pearl and was situated in a boundless darkness. This vast and boundless dark space was like an extraterrestrial starry sky. The vast five elements world floated quietly in the darkness. It was actually less than 1% of the dark space. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but sigh. The heaven-mending pearl was really a top-notch divine item, an existence that could mend the sky. A moment later, he carefully observed the five elements world. Suddenly, he raised his eyebrows. A thick look of surprise flashed across his eyes. How can this be? I've only ascended to the God realm for 10 years. The five elements world actually expanded by 2 times. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 34:20. Ji Tianqing even thought that he saw wrongly. After observing carefully for a moment again, he confirmed that he did not see wrongly. The five elements world really became bigger, expanding a full 2 times compared to before. Furthermore, the sacred golden light enveloping the surface of the five elements world also became even more dazzling. The aura undulation of the world power also became more vigorous and surging. Compared to the many worlds in the lower planes, the five elements world was already a pinnacle great world. Ji Tianqing crossed the darkness and flew towards the five elements world. He was still muttering in his heart, before ascending, I didn't see any changes in the five elements world for so many years. Now, 10 years after ascending to the divine world, the five elements world expanded by 2 times. World expansion requires immeasurable divine power and also a long time. How can it be so easy? No, wait. There must be a problem here. Harboring doubts and curiosity, Ji Tianqing passed through the sacred golden light screen and flew into the five elements world. After being away for many years, he returned to the five elements world once again and observed this familiar yet strange world, patiently searching for the answer. At the same time, the Azure Jade Divine Warship had just entered the Fire Mulberry region for a few days and was currently speeding in the northern region, flying all the way south. In the central region of the Fire Mulberry region, there was a stretch of deep mountains and great swamps with a radius of 1,000,000 miles. This place had steep mountains, deep ravines, and was filled with primitive forests. In addition, this place was abundant with divine power. Demons and divine beasts ran amok, and also nurtured large quantities of heaven and earth treasures and divine items. But this place was deserted. Virtually no one dared to come here to explore and hunt for treasures. Because countless powerhouses and forces in the Fire Mulberry region all knew that the region lord's abode was in this region. This region's domain name was Tilted Phoenix Mountain. And the Fire Mulberry region's region lord was called White Phoenix Divine King. Among the surrounding 10 regions, the Fire Mulberry region's foundation was the strongest. Not only was the territory area larger, all kinds of cultivation resources were more abundant, even the number of Divine King powerhouses was more than ordinary regions. Regions like North Heaven, Cloud Sun, and Golden Dragon, they all only had 2 Divine Kings. One was the Region Lord, the other was the Region Lord's deputy. But the Fire Mulberry region was different. There were a total of 4 Divine King powerhouses. Among them, the strongest was naturally the Region Lord, White Phoenix Divine King. He was a 7th-level Divine King realm high-rank Divine Lord. He had 2 assistants under him, 1 male and 1 female. They were a pair of Tao companions and both of them were God Kings in the 4th Heaven realm. Apart from this, the Fire Mulberry region still had a low-rank Divine King. Even though that God King was not strong, only at the 3rd level of the God King realm, he had been famous for almost 10,000 years. It was only because that deity king was obsessed with the Tao of artifact forging and alchemy that he was a famous divine craftsman that his progress in strength was delayed. Disregarding other strengths, just based on these 4 Divine King powerhouses, it made the Fire Mulberry region show disdain for all heroes and tower above the other regions. As a result, when Divine King Stellar Aspect sent a message to more than 20 domain lords to search and intercept Ji Tianqing, the first person he thought of was Divine King White Phoenix. In addition, God King Stellar Aspect and God King White Phoenix were old friends. Long before God King Stellar Aspect became a divine envoy and was still a domain lord, the 2 of them had known each other and formed a deep friendship. At this moment, in the depths of the slanting Phoenix Mountain, above the white sea of clouds, a magnificent divine palace was sparkling under the setting sun. There were guards standing guard both inside and outside the divine palace. There were also more than 10 maidservants that served God King White Phoenix and his family. Normally, God King White Phoenix would recuperate in seclusion. He rarely interfered with the Fire Mulberry region's politics. Since there were 2 deputies governing the Fire Mulberry region, everything was very stable. Most of the time, the 2 deputies would be busy outside or staying in their cave abodes. If there was nothing important, they would not come to the slanting Phoenix Mountain to disturb God King White Phoenix. But the situation was different now. Ever since God King White Phoenix received God King Stellar Aspect's message, he ended his seclusion and focused on searching and intercepting Ji Tianqing. The 2 deputies were also called back to the slanting Phoenix Mountain to help him handle various matters. Deep in the Divine Palace, in Year Prayer Hall, a divine array that spanned 1,000 feet was in operation. God King White Phoenix sat cross-legged in the middle of the array. Although God King White Phoenix had lived for more than 20,000 years and was already advanced in age, he did not look like an old man. However, his appearance was not that of an old man. Instead, he was a middle-aged man with white hair and a jade-like face. He was a god through and through. Not only was he tall and handsome, but his bearing and bearing were also very noble and graceful. At that moment, his eyes were tightly shut as he formed hand seals. He was borrowing the power of the divine array to cast some kind of divine ability mystic art. He also had a 3rd eye on his forehead. It was a round eye that resembled a divine bird's. It was dark red in color. There were raging divine flames rising from it, containing a mysterious and powerful power. God King White Phoenix was focused on casting the spell. There were 2 God King experts standing at the edge of the array. They were a middle-aged man and woman. They were God King White Phoenix's deputies, a pair of Tao companions. The man was called Qin Yi. He was dressed in a purple robe. The woman was called Wu Shui. She was dressed in a reddish-purple dress. But strangely, they were not as spirited and dignified as other god kings. The couple's appearance and bearing were very ordinary. Their bearing was also blurry. They were the kind that would be difficult to notice if thrown into a crowd. The man was not tall. He was slightly plump and stocky. The woman was also more muscular. Her yellowish cheeks were also filled with pockmarks. Even so, this god-king couple was very loving. They were the envy of others. The two of them discussed telepathically as they watched God-King White Phoenix cast the spell. "Husband, how powerful do you think those god-kings of other races are? They actually killed Region Lord Yun Yang and caused the Region Lord of Golden Dragon to go missing. Even God Emissary Stellar Aspect suffered a great loss." "Well, I'm not too sure. After all, we haven't seen those god-kings of other races. But from what I know, those god emissaries of great heaven are all lofty and arrogant. If he wasn't really forced into a corner, he would never ask the other region lords for help. Therefore, the ability of those god kings of other races can't be underestimated. We can't let our guard down." I understand that. After all, our region lord White Phoenix is a noble and powerful higher god king. His ability and realm are even slightly stronger than that God King Stellar Aspect. We have nothing to worry about. Besides, we're not the main force to deal with those God Kings of other races. We only need to find those God Kings of other races and report their whereabouts to God Emissary Stellar Aspect. We just need to intercept them at the crucial moment. Seeing that Wu Shui was not worried and was brimming with confidence, Qin Yi frowned a little worriedly. "My wife, it's easy to say, but this mission is very difficult. Look, ever since the Region Lord received the message, he has to cast the God's Eye mystic technique every day to observe everything and deduce the mysteries of heaven to search for the whereabouts of those God Kings of other races. It's almost been a month now, but there's still no result. It's fortunate that our Region Lord is powerful and possesses the bloodline of the divine beast, the Fire Phoenix, as well as the Eye of Annihilation. That's why he can cast such an ultimate technique. If it were any other Region Lord, they would definitely be helpless. Even if they personally led people to search the entire sky, it would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. They're destined to find nothing." Chapter 34:21. Hearing her husband Qin Ye's words, Wu Shui turned to look at him. "What? You don't have confidence in the Region Lord? Do you think that we and the Region Lord are working blindly and are destined to have no results?" Qin Yi nodded and said, "Although I can't say that I'm 100% sure, I'm more than 90% sure." Wu Shui waved her hand and said, "There should still be hope. Didn't Stellar Aspect Emissary say that? A few foreign race godly kings are fleeing south. According to their route, they will definitely pass through our Fire Mulberry region. They will even pass through the Fire Mulberry Empire. We have set up god arrays and ambushes in all the important roads. Especially in the Fire Mulberry Empire, we even set up an inescapable net. As long as those foreign race godly kings pass by, we will definitely find them and delay them." "No, you're wrong." Qin Yi hurriedly shook his head and explained, "Although Stellar Aspect Emissary said that they will pass through the Fire Mulberry Empire, I also want to find them and stop them. This way, we can all make a great contribution and obtain Stellar Aspect Emissary's gratitude and favor. But this is clearly unrealistic. Think about it. Those foreign race godly kings committed a crime, they will definitely run away as fast as possible. We all know that they will definitely pass through the Fire Mulberry region. Then as long as they are not idiots, they will definitely take a detour. Originally, searching for them in the Fire Mulberry region is like looking for a needle in a haystack. If they take a detour to other regions, or disguise themselves, hide their aura, etc., then we will have no hope." Hearing this, Wu Shui's will wavered. She said a little unhappily, "Hearing you say this, our chances of success are indeed not high." "Then what do you say? We can't persuade the Region Lord to give up, right? Although he has been continuously casting spells for a month and has consumed a lot of divine power, he must be exhausted. But he is old friends with Stellar Aspect Emissary and is very concerned about this matter. He most likely won't listen to our advice. Qin Yi thought for a moment and nodded in agreement, that's right. It's impossible to make the region lord give up. I just want to remind you not to have too much hope so that you won't be disappointed. I know. Wu Shui pursed her lips, feeling a little down. Qin Yi didn't want to talk about this anymore. He quickly changed the topic and asked, oh right, there's something I don't know if you've heard about it. 10 days ago, the Emperor of the Sanglan Empire sent me a message to report the situation. It was said that a young divine blacksmith suddenly appeared in the Sanglan Empire and appeared at the Fire Dragon Mountain, announcing that he would stay there for 10 years. That young divine craftsman claimed to be a peerless divine craftsman and planned to take in a few disciples. All the artifact craftsmen in the Fire Mulberry domain could go to Fire Dragon Mountain to visit him. If anyone was dissatisfied, they could challenge him in the art of crafting. As long as they were talented enough, he could also guide and teach them. So much so that he would even choose the person with the most potential among the armament refining Grand Masters to be his direct disciple. Really? Wu Shui frowned and asked with interest, a young divine blacksmith. Was he also a divine king? That was definitely a god king from another region. However, he actually called himself a peerless divine craftsman. This was too arrogant. These youngsters nowadays are too insolent. Wu Shui curled her lips with a disdainful expression. Suddenly, she thought of something and asked again, oh right, doesn't our Fire Mulberry domain have a heavenly smelting divine craftsman? Don't the most talented artifact craftsmen all learn from the heavenly smelting divine craftsman? That young divine craftsman doing this, isn't he wrecking the heavenly smelting divine craftsman's show? Forget about the heavenly smelting divine craftsman, even those disciples and grand disciples of the heavenly smelting divine craftsman wouldn't let him off either, right? Isn't that so? Qin Yi hurriedly nodded and said with a light smile, I heard that these few days, several disciples of the heavenly smelting divine craftsman all went to Fire Dragon Mountain to challenge that peerless divine craftsman. Guess what happened in the end? Wu Shui raised her eyebrows and said carelessly, is there still a need to guess? They were definitely all defeated. That person was a divine king powerhouse, a true divine craftsman. No matter how top or how talented an artifact craftsman is, it's impossible to compare to a divine craftsman. Qin Yi was stunned for a moment and explained, you're not wrong to say that, and the result was indeed so. However, that peerless divine craftsman didn't take advantage of them either. The rules of his challenge are very interesting, the opponent can choose what grade of divine weapon to refine. I heard that those disciples of the heavenly smelting divine craftsman competed with him in refining a monarch-level high-grade divine weapon to see who could refine it faster and with better quality. But even so, those disciples of the heavenly smelting divine craftsman still lost miserably. After a pause, Qin Yi continued, however, those masters were not convinced and felt that this challenge was unfair, so they prepared to jointly invite the heavenly smelting divine craftsman to come out of the mountain and get back at him. It's a pity that we have to help the domain lord search for those foreign race divine kings, so we can't leave for now. Otherwise, I would want to personally watch the battle and see how capable that peerless divine general is. Wu Shui was also very interested when she heard this, and asked with a frown, will the heavenly smelting divine craftsman agree to such a thankless task? If he wins against that peerless divine craftsman, it's fine, everyone will think that it's reasonable, who asked him to be a senior of the artifact crafting Dao. But if he loses to that peerless divine craftsman, his own reputation will be ruined. Qin Yi thought for a moment, and said with a serious expression, originally, I also thought that such a shrewd old fox like the heavenly smelting divine craftsman would definitely not agree. But now that the matter has spread, the entire Fire Mulberry domain is discussing this matter. Countless artifact crafting grandmasters and forces are filled with righteous indignation, jointly requesting the heavenly smelting divine craftsman to fight and help the Fire Mulberry domain regain face. You say, this matter has risen to the dignity and glory of the Fire Mulberry domain. No matter how unwilling the heavenly smelting divine craftsman is, he can only bite the bullet and go. Wu Shui nodded slightly and said, if that's the case, then it'll be lively. Unfortunately, we can't leave and can't personally go to Fire Dragon Mountain to watch the battle. Oh right, you have to keep in touch with Sanglon Emperor, it's best to let him report the latest progress every day. The husband and wife were communicating via voice transmission, discussing the gossip of the two divine craftsmen. At this moment, the divine formation in the hall suddenly sped up. Above Divine King White Phoenix's head, a dazzling light suddenly lit up, folding and interweaving into a dazzling light screen. On that five-colored flame light screen, an endless mountain range actually appeared, as well as the silhouette of some majestic cities. There was a long and narrow divine light, like the tail flame of a meteor, flying over the mountain range and the city. Even though the image on the light screen was rather blurry and not very clear. But Qin Yi and Wu Shui were startled awake, and they both stared at the five-colored light screen with wide eyes, revealing expressions of deep joy and surprise. There's news. Quickly look, Lord Region Lord must have found it. Chapter 34-22. The five-colored light screen above Divine King White Phoenix's head was still changing. Qin Yi and Wu Shui were both excited as they stared at the screen without blinking. The couple observed for a while before Wu Shui noticed the godly light in the sky and frowned. Can that streak of divine light be the alien god king we are searching for? Qin Yi nodded in agreement and murmured, look at the godly light's appearance and speed, it doesn't look like a few godly kings, but more like a godly ship. Wu Shui exclaimed, this is unbelievable. Domain Lord's Eye of Annihilation is indeed the bloodline inheritance of the godly beast Fire Phoenix, it has such a miraculous effect. Qin Yi stared at the screen for a while and raised his eyebrows, look at the mountains and cities that the ship flew past, it seems to be the north of Fire Mulberry Domain. I remember now, that mountain range should be the Lingyue Mountain of the Qi-Ling Empire. In other words, the alien deity kings are in the kingdom of Qi-Ling right now. Wu Shui nodded and said excitedly, we've finally found it. Our chance to do something is here. I'll send a message to the Emperor of the Qi-Ling Empire and have him lead troops to the Lingyue Mountain to stop them. As she spoke, Wu Shui impatiently took out her communication jade slip and was about to send a message. But Qin Yi was calmer and stopped her. Don't. We don't know if this is real time or if it happened before. Plus, even if you send a message to the Emperor of the Qi-Ling Empire now, he won't be able to get there in time. Don't you know how fast a godly ship is? Wu Shui was instantly at a loss for words. Her hand that was holding the communication jade slip froze in midair. Luckily, Divine King White Phoenix stopped casting and the five-colored light screen above his head disappeared. The divine formation around him also gradually stopped operating. He opened his eyes and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air, wiping away the beads of sweat on his forehead. For a month, he had to cast a secret art and activate the Eye of Annihilation every day. It was extremely tiring for him. Especially just now, when he had seen through the secrets of the universe and deduced the traces of the unfamiliar Divine King's aura, he had expended a large amount of divine power. After resting for a while, Divine King White Phoenix stood up and walked out of the divine formation. Qin Yi and Wu Shui hurried over and asked about the situation with concern. Domain Lord, how is your situation? Are you tired? Do you want to take a break? Lord Domain Lord, was the scene you deduced just now the traces of those foreign race god kings? Divine King White Phoenix nodded and said, although I've been casting spells continuously for a month, I'm indeed tired and exhausted. I really want to circulate my energy and recuperate for a few days. However, the scene that I predicted just now was indeed the location of those alien god kings. They had just passed by Lingyue Mountain in the kingdom of Qi-Ling, so they should still be in the kingdom of Qi-Ling. As expected, Stellar Aspect Emissary did not mention that those foreign race god kings were very arrogant and confident. They did not take a detour to other regions and headed all the way south to the Fire Mulberry region. Next, they will leave the Qi Ling Empire, enter the Sang Lan Empire, and then the Hua Sang Empire. Divine King White Phoenix's tone was steady and powerful, and it was also filled with dignity. After explaining the situation, he continued, as of now, no one has found any traces of the foreign race's god kings. Therefore, I cannot rest for the time being, I have to report this news to Stellar Aspect Emissary. At the same time, we have to take action immediately and gather a large number of god monarchs to intercept that godship. Qin Yi and Wu Shui quickly cupped their hands and bowed, saying, yes, in unison. However, Qin Yi hesitated and reminded, Lord Domain Lord, to intercept those foreign race god kings, not only do we have to gather a large number of god monarchs, they must be high-level god monarchs. It's a pity that the high-level god monarchs that we can gather are scattered all over the Fire Mulberry region. It will take a long time to gather them. Even if you give the order to the various empires to give the god monarchs special rights and allow them to gather through the teleportation formation. However, I estimate that they will need at least 3 days to gather. Divine King White Phoenix frowned and thought for a while, then nodded slightly and said, 3 days is enough for that godship to leave the Qi Ling Empire and enter the Sang Lan Empire. When we are done gathering and ready to intercept them, that godship will probably leave the Sang Lan Empire again. In such a rush, I am worried that there will be an accident or that the god monarchs are weak, sigh. Wu Shui quickly comforted, Lord Domain Lord, don't worry. The high-level god monarchs under our command are all elite soldiers. If you feel that we are too hasty to intercept that godship after gathering, you are worried that there will be an accident. Then why don't we wait at ease and guard the borders of the Fire Mulberry Empire after gathering? Anyway, that godship will go all the way south. After passing through the Sang Lan Empire, it will definitely enter the Fire Mulberry Empire. We will wait for the rabbit to come out of a tree stump. We will be fully prepared and can also set up traps and ambushes in advance. Lord Domain Lord, what do you think? Divine King White Phoenix frowned and thought for a while, then nodded and said, I have weighed the pros and cons. This seems to be the best choice. Anyway, we know the whereabouts of that godship, but those foreign race god kings don't know our plan. Then let's do it this way. Qin Yi and Wu Shui revealed gratified smiles and quickly nodded, saying, yes, Lord Domain Lord. Lord Domain Lord, then we'll go and pass down the order right now and start gathering the various forces. You can also just happen to recuperate for a few days. Divine King White Phoenix nodded his head in agreement and said with a wave of his hand, all right, this matter will be left to you all to handle. This king is going to rest. Qin Yi and Wu Shui said goodbye, then turned around and left with quick steps. Divine King White Phoenix also returned to the hidden chamber in his bedroom, consumed divine pills, and meditated to regulate his breathing. Before long, the high-level god lords scattered all over the Fire Mulberry region received the summons and orders. Immediately, 200 high-level god lords all started moving, returning to the Fire Mulberry Empire from all over. The various major empires' emperors also received the Domain Lord's orders. They opened up special privileges one after another, opening up transmission divine arrays for many high-level god lords. All in all, a powerful force was currently gathering rapidly, waiting for that godship in the north to walk right into the trap. At the same time, Ji Tianqing roamed the Five Elements world for a long time and also figured out the situation. The reality was just as he saw. The Five Elements world indeed expanded twice. Not only did the entire star become twice as large, the cultivation resources on the star also became very abundant. Even the trillions of living beings on the star were also rapidly multiplying and expanding. The various continents also became more prosperous. The various races' martial Daos also became even more glorious and prosperous. What made Ji Tianqing most surprised was that after the Five Elements world's territory skyrocketed several times, the resources and heaven and earth spiritual energy also increased several times. This led to the various races having geniuses as plentiful as clouds, powerhouses emerging in large numbers. Not only did the number of martial gods increase greatly, even a true god powerhouse even appeared. Chapter 34-23. Back then, many experts of the Five Elements world had joined forces to fight against the invasion of the Heaven Punisher race. After an arduous battle, many experts defended the Five Elements world and destroyed the invasion plan of the Heaven Punisher race. However, in that long battle, the Five Elements world had paid a huge price. Martial god Tianju had gone astray and was killed by Ji Tianqing. Martial god Tai Hao had died in battle against the Heaven Punisher race's southern marshal. Martial god Luoshui had also chosen to sacrifice himself in order to help Yunyao. The three divine masters had fallen one after another. Even the messenger of the divine ruins and fairy Yuqin, who lived in seclusion, had sacrificed their lives to protect the Five Elements world. From then on, only Ji Tianqing, Yunyao, and Ji Ku were left in the Five Elements world. When they brought the Five Elements world to wander the starry sky to take revenge on the Heaven Punisher race, there were no more martial gods in the Five Elements world. Only many martial sages were left, guarding the three divine kingdoms and many other forces. Ji Tianqing had always thought that the Five Elements world would need at least a few hundred years to recover after suffering such a heavy blow. However, he did not expect that in just 100 years, not only had the Five Elements world recovered, but it had also become more prosperous than before. Not only had more than 10 martial sages become martial gods, but they also guarded the three divine kingdoms. The strongest among them had broken through the limit of the martial god realm and become a true god. And that person was Kenshin's disciple, Huanglong Daoist. Therefore, in the current Five Elements world, because of Huanglong Daoist, this true god, Pillar of Heaven's mountain was already worthy of being called the number one force. Ji Tianqing was both shocked and gratified when he discovered this situation. What shocked him was that the Five Elements world had recovered so quickly and was even more prosperous than before. Moreover, the seal and shackles of the Five Elements world had been removed, and a true god had appeared. He was also more and more certain that the Five Elements world was definitely not a low-level world. It was very likely that it was once the main world. What made him gratified was that the current strongest person in the Five Elements world was his disciple, Huanglong Daoist. This made him feel proud as well, and he was secretly proud. After calming down, he carefully pondered for a long time. There must be many reasons for such a huge change in the Five Elements world. Firstly, Yunyao was killed back then, causing the seal of the Five Elements world to disappear, and she was successfully resurrected. Secondly, the Five Elements world had broken away from the lower planes and was brought to the God realm by him, so it had lost its shackles and restrictions. That was why it was able to expand rapidly after absorbing a huge amount of training resources and divine power. In addition, he had become one with the Five Elements world, and the two would rise and fall together. His strength increased rapidly, and so did his Five Elements world. After understanding all of this, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but think, I've just recovered to the second level of the God King realm and the Five Elemental world has already undergone such shocking changes. When I recover to the peak of the Divine King stage, will the Five Elements world expand 5 or 6 times and become an eternal world like the Divine Realm or the Dragon Realm? It seemed very possible. However, if I want the elemental world to grow faster, I have to send it more divine power and resources. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing could not help but try. He took out 500 billion divine stones worth of training resources from his spatial ring and put them all into the heaven-mending orb. Next, the heaven-mending orb swallowed the 500 billion divine stones and turned them into endless divine power, which was poured into the Five Elements world. The moment to witness a miracle appeared. When the endless divine power merged into the Five Elements world, Ji Tianqing saw the Five Elements world grow bit by bit with his own eyes, expanding by another tenth. Not only did the five elements world grow in size, the training resources and various treasures it contained also appeared like bamboo shoots after the rain. This result confirmed Ji Tianqing's guess. It's just as I expected. As long as I send divine power and resources to the five elements world, it can grow quickly. Before this, I rarely took the initiative to send divine power and resources to it. I only relied on my increasing strength to drive it, and the heaven-mending orb automatically absorbing the divine power of the God realm to help it grow. Even so, it grew so quickly. If I send divine power and resources to it often in the future, it will grow even faster. Ji Tianqing and the five elements world were already one and complemented each other. Just now, he sent 500 billion divine stones worth of resources to the five elements world. Not only did the five elements world grow by 10%, even his own strength increased by a bit. Therefore, he decided to do his best to plunder training resources in the future and think of ways to strengthen the five elements world. This was not only to increase his own strength, he also wanted to see how far the five elements world could grow. Would it become an eternal world like the God realm or the Dragon realm? This matter came to a temporary conclusion. Ji Tianqing began to consider another matter. During this period of time, I used all kinds of divine abilities and secret techniques to search the entire five elements world, but I didn't find the seventh divine orb. It seems that the seventh divine orb shouldn't be in the five elements world. It's very likely that it's in the God realm. However, the God realm is so vast, asking me to find the seventh divine orb is simply looking for a needle in a haystack. However, Yao Yao's strength is improving very slowly. It's very likely that she's stuck at the peak of the divine monarch realm and can't break through to the divine king realm. I have to think of another way to help her increase her strength and reach the divine king realm as soon as possible. After all, searching for the seventh divine orb is not something that can be completed in a short period of time. Ji Tianqing thought about it and felt that there were only a few ways to help Yunyao break through to the divine king realm. The first was to find a king-level divine pill that could help Yunyao break through her shackles and increase her strength by a huge amount. The second was to help her refine a set of king-level divine artifacts so that she could nourish and refine the divine artifacts and comprehend and explore them. The third was to teach her king-level divine abilities so that she could comprehend and explore them. Actually, the core idea of these three methods was the same. They were all using the power of king-level divine artifacts to help Yunyao break through her shackles. However, the first method was very difficult to achieve. Firstly, Ji Tianqing didn't have that kind of divine pill. Even if he wanted to refine it, he had to find more than 10 kinds of alchemy materials. In comparison, the third method was the simplest. Not to mention that Ji Tianqing would teach Yunyao, she already had king-level techniques and divine abilities in her memories. However, this method was too slow. After thinking about it, Ji Tianqing still felt that the second method was more reliable. He had decided to refine a king-level divine artifact for Yunyao. In any case, Yunyao would definitely become a divine king soon. She would also need a suitable divine king weapon. In addition, Ji Tianqing still had a lot of refining materials left after recasting the Burial of Heaven sword. There were still 2 bottles of Galaxy Golden Sand left, half of the Black Extreme Source Cheese Quintessential Essence left, and a lot of Purple Flame Silver threads left. However, these materials were just icing on the cake. The foundation of refining divine artifacts still required origin stones. No, origin crystals that were even purer than origin stones. After making up his mind, Ji Tianqing dug out a large number of origin stones from the five elements world. He brought the origin stones back to the distorted spacetime and asked Yank to use his divine abilities and secret techniques to refine the origin stones into origin crystals. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 34-24. Yank obeyed Ji Tianqing's orders without question. Moreover, he did not disappoint Ji Tianqing. With the help of the Earth Golden Cloud technique, he quickly refined the mountainous pile of dawn stones into a millstone-sized dawn crystal. Compared to ordinary dawn stones, the dawn crystal was purer and contained more power. It was also more malleable. Ji Tianqing spent a month using the ninth heaven cauldron and the dawn crystal to refine 2 divine swords. Although these 2 divine swords were only Supreme Monarch-grade divine artifacts. However, compared to the 2 divine swords that Yun Yao was using, these 2 divine swords were more perfect and had more potential. Next, Ji Tianqing performed the weapon refining technique in the distorted spacetime. He threw the 2 newly refined divine swords into the ninth heaven cauldron and added the galaxy golden sand, the essence of the Xuanji source qi, the purple flame silver thread, and other materials. He was going to refine 2 king-grade divine swords. It was rare to see Ji Tianqing personally refine weapons. Yang did not go into seclusion to cultivate. He just stood aside and watched quietly. After all, he and Chao Qingyu had learned a lot from watching Ji Tianqing refine the sword of burial of heaven. To him, it was a great opportunity to be able to watch Ji Tianqing refine divine artifacts. Yang was engrossed in watching. His eyes were fixed on Ji Tianqing's movements as he observed the changes in the ninth heaven cauldron. Since he did not want to disturb him, Ji Tianqing let him be and did not ask him to leave. Let him watch if he wanted to. How much he could learn from it depended on his own ability. Time passed quickly. Day after day passed by, the flames in the ninth heaven cauldron burned fiercely. Several sets of refining materials were smelted and integrated into the 2 origin crystal divine swords. As time passed, the 2 divine swords underwent subtle changes and their quality was constantly improving. A month later, 3 sets of king-grade weapon refining materials were completely integrated into the 2 divine swords. This made the divine swords materials completely sublimate and reach the lower king grade. The only thing the 2 swords lacked was the restriction divine formation and the divine runes of the laws that were attached to the swords. Thus, Ji Tianqing began to use a secret technique to inscribe restrictions and divine runes on the divine sword. 1 streak, 2 streaks, 3 streaks. A year later, the 2 origin crystal swords were engraved with more than 240 divine runes of law and more than 2,400 types of restrictions. The source crystal divine sword was already a treasure among king-grade low-grade divine artifacts. After adding over 50 law divine runes and over 500 divine formations, it would become a king-grade mediocre divine artifact. Ji Tianqing was still able to remain calm, but Yang was fascinated by the scene, full of amazement and emotion. My lord's crafting skills are simply too exquisite, too miraculous. The last time he recast the sword of burial of heaven, he was already fast enough. He didn't expect that this time, he would take several times less time. But until now, I've already observed him twice, but I still can't understand his refining technique. Just as Yang was filled with emotion, Ji Tianqing suddenly stopped casting and frowned. His brows were tightly knitted, and his expression was somewhat grave. A trace of unwillingness and disappointment flashed across his eyes. Yang was stunned and looked at him in confusion. He was about to ask what was going on. At this moment, the flames in the divine cauldron of 9 heavens floated, and the 2 divine swords floating in the flames suddenly emitted crisp cracking sounds. Yang's body shook, and he immediately revealed a look of disbelief. He couldn't help but exclaim, "How can this be? The divine swords are cracking." That's right. Cracks actually appeared on the surface of the 2 origin crystal swords floating in the divine fire. The blade of one of the divine swords cracked, and a chopstick-long crack appeared. The hilt of the other divine sword cracked, and a half-foot-long crack exploded. The 2 divine swords were even trembling, as if they couldn't withstand some kind of force. The cracks on the surface were still expanding. Ji Tianqing sighed and murmured to himself, "Sigh. It's just as I expected. I already guessed that this would be the result. I shouldn't have thought that I would get lucky. I should have prepared the refining materials in advance." No matter how brilliant my refining technique is, I can't change the grade of the materials and forcibly superimpose more divine patterns and restrictions. Yank was originally puzzled, but when he heard his muttering, he suddenly understood. Master, you mean, the materials of the two divine swords aren't strong enough to withstand so many precepts and restrictions? Ji Tianqing nodded and explained, when I reforged the Sword of Burial of Heaven, I used a total of 5 sets of king-grade materials, so it could be upgraded to mid-grade king-grade. But to refine these two divine swords, I only have 3 sets of king-grade materials, so I can only refine them to low-grade king-grade. If I forcibly upgrade them to mid-grade king-grade, the materials of the divine swords won't be able to withstand it and will only collapse and explode. It was true that when he reforged the Sword of Burial of Heaven, he used a 30,000-year-old divine dragon spine and a set of 7 fire divine gold. Yen Ko also furrowed his brows and asked worriedly, "My lord, did you fail this time? What should we do now?" If the refining failed, all his efforts would be in vain. Not only would the two divine swords be destroyed, but the materials and time consumed would also be wasted. Ji Tianqing shook his head and said calmly, "It's not a failure yet. I'll continue to cast spells and control the power of the 9 heavens cauldron. I can still maintain the form of the divine swords and prevent them from collapsing quickly. However, if we want to save these 2 swords, we have to add more king-grade materials." Yank was in a dilemma. He scratched his head and said, "But in such a hurry, where are we going to find king-grade materials? You don't have any, and I don't have any in stock. How about this, you wait here, and I'll go ask Chao Qingyu and his wife." As he spoke, Yank was about to leave the distorted spacetime to find Chao Qingyu and Lan He. Ji Tianqing hurriedly stopped him and exhorted, "Wait a moment. The couple probably didn't have any suitable refining materials in their hands. Go find Chao Qingyu and ask him where we are now. If possible, let's stop and look around to see if we can find any king-grade materials." Yank understood immediately. He nodded and said, "Okay. I understand." Previously, when they entered the Golden Dragon Abyss in the Golden Dragon Domain, they obtained a huge amount of resources and mineral veins. They also obtained precious king-grade materials. Yank prayed silently, hoping that they would be lucky enough to find a treasure like the Golden Dragon Abyss nearby. Swoosh! With a flash of divine light, Yank left the distorted spacetime and returned to the divine worship. He quickly rushed to the control room, asked Chao Qingyu for directions, and conveyed Ji Tianqing's message. Hearing that Ji Tianqing was in trouble and urgently needed king-grade materials, Chao Qingyu also looked worried. "How's the young master? Has the situation stabilized? I only have a few sets of materials for alchemy and formation. I don't have any suitable materials for refining. We're now in the Fire Mulberry Domain, and we've just entered the territory of the Sang-Lan Empire." Yank said without hesitation, "Master guessed correctly. You poor bastard. Alright, let's stop for a while. Let's go gather some information and see where we can get king-tier materials as soon as possible." Chapter 34-25. Chao Qingyu was worried that Ji Tianqing's business would be affected, so he didn't want to waste time arguing with Yank. He steered the Azure Jade Divine Warship and continued flying south. 2 hours later, the Divine Warship crossed the vast mountains and forests and appeared in the sky above a grassland. An oval-shaped city with a radius of a few hundred miles appeared on the grassland ahead. Judging from the shape and size of the city, it should be an ancient city that had existed for thousands of years and was home to millions of Protoss. Thus, Chao Qingyu put away the Divine Warship and flew toward the city with Yank. It was early in the morning, and the sun was rising from the east. The north and south gates of the city were open, and countless Protoss went in and out in an endless stream. As they approached the majestic city, Chao Qingyu and Yank used the invisibility technique to hide their figures and auras. The two of them easily blended into the city and began to gather information. They released an invisible divine sense that enveloped the entire city, listening to the sounds from all directions and asking for all kinds of information. This method was rather simple and crude, but also the most practical. Compared to asking someone, it was undoubtedly faster. Of course, that was only if the people in the city were discussing relevant information. If no one mentioned which secret realm or king-level refining materials, this method wouldn't work. Fortunately. 2 hours later, Chao Qingyu and Yank found the answer. The two of them filtered out a few useful pieces of information from tens of thousands of miscellaneous information. They withdrew their divine sense at the same time and ended their investigation. They looked at each other and smiled knowingly. You have an answer. Of course, right? Why else would you smile so lowly? Yank, I just don't want to waste young master's time, so I can't be bothered to argue with you. If you continue to talk nonsense, I'll have to fight you. We're at the same level anyway, so I'm not afraid of you. Fine, fine, fine. Let's not talk about those useless things. Let's get down to business. I've been eavesdropping for half a day, and I heard that the people in the city are talking about some peerless divine craftsman, Fire Dragon Mountain, and heavenly smelting divine craftsman. That's right. Chao Qingyu nodded and said with a smile, I've also heard a few thousand pieces of news about this. I can summarize what's going on. I feel that this is really like giving a pillow when one is drowsy. Young master's matter has been settled. Yank stared at him and asked expectantly, what's going on? What have you concluded? Tell me about it. Chao Qingyu looked at him with disdain and sneered, young master really overestimated your intelligence by sending you out to gather information. Forget it. I don't want to waste my time with you. I'll just go and meet young master and report the news to him. As he spoke, Chao Qingyu rushed out of the city, preparing to leave. Yank hurried to catch up with him. His face darkened with displeasure as he asked, who are you looking down on? Wasn't it just a competition between two divine blacksmiths? You make it sound like you're the only one who knows. Chao Qingyu hurried without looking back. He said telepathically, don't dawdle. If we waste another 15 minutes, young master will have 50 times more time in the divine tower. Yank thought that it made sense and did not dwell on it anymore. He could only suppress his curiosity and follow Chao Qingyu out of the city. Soon, the two of them left the ancient city and returned to the divine ship. The divine ship remained invisible as it floated above the sea of clouds. Chao Qingyu and Yank entered the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower together to report to Ji Tianqing. Swoosh! Swoosh! The two of them entered the distorted spacetime and flew toward the sacred tree as fast as they could. When the two of them arrived at the sacred tree, they saw the Jiutian cauldron, which was as big as a palace, floating in spacetime. The cauldron spun slowly, and there were still 5-colored divine flames rising within it. Ji Tianqing sat cross-legged in spacetime, his hands forming a seal to control the cauldron and the two divine swords within it. Greetings, young master. Greetings, master. Chao Qingyu and Yank came to Ji Tianqing's side and bowed at the same time. Ji Tianqing opened his eyes and glanced at the two of them. He said in surprise, you have news so soon. Or, have you two not started? Chao Qingyu smiled and said, young master, we did not disappoint you. We have already found some useful clues. Ji Tianqing was also interested. He smiled in surprise and said, tell me about it. Yank hurriedly said, master, we are in the Sanglan Empire of the Fire Mulberry Domain. Chao Qingyu and I found a city with more than 6 million people of the divine race. We sneaked into the city and used our divine senses to investigate the movements of the entire city. As expected, we found some useful information. At this point, Yank did not continue. He tilted his head and gave Chao Qingyu a look, indicating for him to continue. After all, he could not explain what was going to happen next. He still had to rely on Chao Qingyu. If he did not rush to say this, he might not have the chance to speak. How could Chao Qingyu not understand his intentions? A mocking smile instantly appeared on his face. However, he did not expose Yank. He cupped his hands to Ji Tianqing and reported in detail, "Young master, the news we found is like this. More than half a month ago, a young divine craftsman suddenly appeared in the Sanglan Empire and announced that he would stay in the Fire Dragon Mountain for 10 years. This person was very arrogant and called himself a peerless divine craftsman. His attainments in the art of refining had long reached the peak, and it was difficult to find a worthy opponent. He wanted to stay in the Sanglan Empire for 10 years and allow all the master craftsmen to challenge him. He would choose the most talented and potential master craftsmen from the challengers to be his disciple. However, there was a divine craftsman who had been famous for 10,000 years in the Fire Mulberry region. He was known as the Heavenly Smelting Divine Craftsman. The top master craftsmen of the Fire Mulberry region, as well as several master craftsman families and sects, were all considered the disciples and students of the Heavenly Smelting Divine Craftsman. That peerless divine craftsman's actions were undoubtedly to destroy the Heavenly Smelting Divine Craftsman's reputation. Therefore, the disciples of the Heavenly Smelting Divine Craftsman went to the Fire Dragon Mountain to challenge the peerless divine craftsman. However, those master craftsmen of the Divine Lord Realm were all defeated by the peerless divine craftsman. However, they were not convinced of their loss, and even involved the face and honor of the Fire Mulberry region. They jointly requested the Heavenly Smelting Divine Craftsman to come forward and compete with the peerless divine craftsman. The Heavenly Smelting Divine Craftsman considered for a long time, but he could not resist the requests of countless master craftsmen and could only agree to fight. I reckon that in the next few days, the Heavenly Smelting Divine Craftsman will go to the Fire Dragon Mountain and compete with the peerless divine craftsman in public. After listening to Chao Qingyu's report, Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment. He said with a playful smile, "This news is indeed useful. It's really a pillow when I'm sleepy. Since it's a duel between two divine craftsmen, they must have king-level refining materials in their hands. That's simple. Let's also go to the Fire Dragon Mountain and borrow some materials from them." Yank was stunned for a moment and asked without hesitation, "King-level refining materials? How could they possibly borrow them?" Ji Tianqing smiled even more playfully, "They will borrow them. After all, our fists are big." Yank understood instantly and immediately grinned, revealing a fierce sneer. Chapter 34-26. Seeing that Ji Tianqing and Yank were up to no good and were about to rob someone, Chao Qingyu had a strange expression on his face. He couldn't help but wipe the sweat off his forehead. He coughed softly and reminded Ji Tianqing. "Young master, that peerless divine craftsman has publicly announced that he is willing to accept the challenge of any master craftsman. If anyone can beat him in the art of crafting, he is willing to give away 3 king-level low-grade divine artifacts or the same amount of crafting materials. With your attainments in crafting, if you challenge that peerless divine craftsman, you should have a high chance of winning." Ji Tianqing was stunned. He glared at Chao Qingyu and thought to himself, "Damn you, why didn't you say so earlier?" On the surface, he laughed and said to Yank, "See, I told you, we can definitely borrow crafting materials." Yank nodded in agreement and said with anticipation, "That's right. My lord will challenge that guy first. If he wins, he will get the crafting materials. If he loses, we will snatch them from him. In short, we must have his crafting materials." Ji Tianqing couldn't help but roll his eyes. He was speechless. Chao Qingyu was also speechless. He glanced at Yank and thought to himself, "Although you are right and young master does have such an idea, aren't you too straightforward? Young master didn't even have the nerve to say it, but you revealed it. Your intelligence is really worrying." The atmosphere was a little awkward. Ji Tianqing quickly changed the topic and said to Chao Qingyu, "All right, this matter is settled. Let's go to Mount Fire Dragon. Aya. Yank suddenly came to his senses and said with annoyance, "It's over. When I was asking around, I forgot the location of Mount Fire Dragon. Why don't I go ask around again and find out where Mount Fire Dragon is?" Ji Tianqing frowned and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "It's really hard for you to ask for information." Chao Qingyu couldn't help but laugh. Looking at Yank, he teased, "Tell me, other than being big and fierce in a fight, what other abilities do you have?" Yank thought for a moment and said seriously, "I'm quite resistant to beatings. I can block a blade for you at a critical moment." "Well, your loyalty is commendable," Ji Tianqing praised with a smile. Chao Qingyu shook his head and said, "All right, you don't have to go. I've already asked around. Young master, the Fire Dragon Mountain is located southeast of the Sanglan Empire. It's about 8 million li away from here." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "All right, then you go and pilot the divine ship. We will head to Fire Dragon Mountain now. I will comb through the divine cauldron's array formation again. When the 2 divine swords are stable, I will come out to find you." Chao Qingyu didn't say anything more. He bowed and said goodbye, then left with Yank. Ji Tianqing spent a few days combing through the 9 heavens divine cauldron's array formation and stabilizing the situation. The 2 divine swords floated in the divine cauldron. They wouldn't heal on their own, but the cracks wouldn't expand either. At least in the short term, Ji Tianqing didn't have to worry about the 2 divine swords. He left the distorted spacetime and returned to the Green Jade divine ship's secret room. At this moment, Chao Qingyu and Yank were piloting the divine ship. They had been flying southeast for 4 hours and were about to reach Fire Dragon Mountain. They were still thousands of li away, but the 3 of them saw the figure of Fire Dragon Mountain high in the sky. It was a towering mountain range that was hundreds of thousands of li long. The terrain was steep, and there were deep valleys and cliffs on both sides of the mountain range. Looking down from the sky, the huge mountain range looked like a divine dragon lying on the ground. The mountain range's soil and rocks were mostly dark red, and the surface was covered with lush red maple trees. As a result, the entire mountain range looked like a gigantic fire dragon. That was how the name Fire Dragon Mountain came about. But more importantly, the mountain range's soil was special, and it contained rich mineral resources. What was even more special was that there were a few huge volcanoes deep under the mountain range, and they had accumulated a huge amount of magma. The raging earth core divine flame was firmly suppressed by Fire Dragon Mountain, so it didn't erupt on the surface and cause a disaster. But this also made the temperature inside Fire Dragon Mountain extremely high. It was a treasure land with the most abundant fire elemental divine power. Fire Dragon Mountain was undoubtedly a livable place for blacksmiths and divine blacksmiths. It was extremely beneficial for cultivation and blacksmithing. Taking this opportunity, Chao Qingyu also explained the situation of the divine blacksmith to Ji Tianqing in detail. After a while, the Green Jade divine ship flew above Fire Dragon Mountain. Ji Tianqing and the other 2 looked around and saw that the highest peak of Fire Dragon Mountain was occupied by many divine ships. There were countless figures of gods moving around. And in the red maple forest, a golden palace could be vaguely seen, shining with a faint divine light. It should be there. Let's go. Ji Tianqing looked at the palace and said to Chao Qingyu. Chao Qingyu steered the divine ship and arrived above the red maple forest. There were more than a dozen divine ships hovering around, and there were more than 100 divine race members guarding the divine ships. On the ground below, in the square in front of the Golden Palace, there were dozens of divine lord experts gathered in groups of 3 to 5, whispering. Seeing an unfamiliar divine ship arrive, countless people looked up at the sky, sizing it up with interest and discussing. Whose ship is that? I don't think I've seen it before. That divine ship looks quite impressive. I wonder which empire's royal family it belongs to. Or some blacksmith grandmaster. Hee hee. No matter which empire's grandmaster it is, he must be here to cheer for the divine blacksmith. That's right. That white-furred divine blacksmith is arrogant and looked down on the heroes of our Fire Mulberry region. He has already angered everyone and is the public enemy of all blacksmiths. We've been waiting for half a day. Why isn't the divine blacksmith here yet? Wait a little longer. For the divine blacksmith to agree to fight, it's already giving that white-furred divine blacksmith a lot of face. Dozens of divine Lord Realm blacksmith grandmasters were whispering to each other. At this time, Chao Qingyu put away the divine ship. Swish! With a flash of light, Ji Tianqing, Chao Qingyu, and Yank appeared in the sky. Ji Tianqing walked down from the sky and landed on the square in front of the palace's entrance. Yank and Chao Qingyu followed behind him, their expressions calm and indifferent, ignoring the people around them. The surrounding blacksmith grandmasters were all dressed luxuriously and had dignified appearances. They either brought many attendants and guards, making their statuses seem extraordinary. Or they gathered in groups of 3 to 5, flattering each other and talking loudly, making their statuses seem extraordinary. In short, these blacksmith grandmasters were all heroes of a region, figures that could be ranked in the top ranks in the Fire Mulberry region. In contrast, Ji Tianqing trio made everyone feel unfamiliar. Their attire was also very ordinary, and they did not have the arrogance of the crowd. Naturally, many blacksmith grandmasters sized them up a few times and lost interest in observing and inquiring. In any case, they were not famous powerhouses of the Fire Mulberry region, nor were they powerful figures of a region. Who cared who they were? Chapter 34-27. The square was bustling with people. The door of the Golden Palace was closed, and there was no movement. Inside and outside the palace, on both sides of the door, there was not a single guard or maid. Of course, this Golden Palace was still quite exquisite and glorious, revealing a luxurious and sacred temperament. Ji Tianqing walked to the edge of the square and came to the steps outside the palace door. Looking around, he said with a smile, "What are these Fire Mulberry region's master artificers doing here? Waiting for the heavenly smelting divine craftsman to come and watch him challenge that peerless divine craftsman?" Chao Qingyu nodded and said, "Yes. I just heard that these more than 60 refiners are all powerful experts and leaders of the various empires in the Fire Mulberry territory. Some of them just arrived today, but most of them have been here for a long time, waiting to watch the competition between the two divine craftsmen. It seems that more than half of the refiners here have challenged the heavenly smelting divine craftsman. It's just that they all lost miserably, so they are full of anger." Speaking of this, Chao Qingyu could not help but reveal a mocking smile. Yank pointed to a few groups of people on the left and said in a low voice, "Chao Qingyu, you can't generalize. Although most of them worship the heavenly smelting divine craftsman and are hostile to the white-haired divine craftsman, look at those divine craftsmen. But look at those god monarchs over there. They all want to be apprenticed to the white-furred divine craftsman. I just heard that they said it's time, and the door of the divine palace should be opening." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked, "What white-haired divine craftsman? Is it a title or a nickname?" Yank smacked his lips and said indifferently, "It should be the nickname that these divine craftsmen gave to the young divine craftsman." At this moment, the door of the palace suddenly creaked and opened to both sides. The dazzling noon sun passed through the door and into the hall. The divine lords who were whispering in the square immediately quieted down, their eyes focused on the door of the hall. They saw a divine clan youth wearing a snow-white cloak holding the door knocker with both hands, yawning with his head raised. Although he was tall, handsome, and had a noble temperament that ordinary Protoss could not hope to match, it was obvious that he had an extraordinary background. However, his snow-white hair was fluffy and his sleepy appearance was far from noble and dignified. If he were to say that he was a lazy Taoist child who watched over the cauldron for the divine craftsman, it would definitely be believable. However, the dozens of divine emperors on the square all stared at the Taoist child. Their eyes were either filled with respect, hatred, or hostility. There was no need to ask, Ji Tianqing knew that the handsome young man in the white fur cloak was the white-furred divine craftsman they were talking about. Not only did he have a head full of white hair, but his cloak was also white and fluffy. The nickname, white-haired divine craftsman, was quite appropriate. Ah! Phew! The white-furred divine craftsman glanced at the people on the square, looking listless and bored. He waved his hand and said, "Today's challenge begins. Whoever wants to challenge me or become my disciple, line up and come one by one." After saying that, the white-furred divine craftsman turned around and entered the hall, walking slowly to the seat of honor. As for the Sir Gods on the square, there was an uproar immediately. The three groups of divine lords on the left, a total of 12 people, whispered to each other for a while, then immediately walked up the stairs and went straight to the door of the palace. According to the usual practice, they had to line up at the door and enter the hall to challenge the white-furred divine craftsman. As for the other 50 divine lords, most of them had already challenged him and didn't want to become his disciple, so they stayed on the square and waited for the arrival of the divine craftsman. The 12 divine lords on the left were about to reach the door of the palace. Unexpectedly, Ji Tianqing and the other two were even faster and appeared at the door in an instant. Chao Qingyu and Yank followed behind Ji Tianqing, one on the left and one on the right. Ji Tianqing walked up the stairs and was about to enter the hall to challenge the white-furred divine craftsman. When the 12 divine lords saw this, they immediately became anxious. They all looked angry and started to criticize him. "Hey! Who are you? Why did you cut the line? Kid, how can you be so rude? Are you looking down on us seniors? Kid, which empire are you from? How can you be so rude? If you know what's good for you, scram to the back. We have been here for 2 days." The 12 divine lords were filled with righteous indignation. While criticizing Ji Tianqing, they also blocked his path. The door of the palace, which wasn't very wide, was blocked by 6 or 7 divine lords. The other divine lords surrounded Ji Tianqing, scolding and lecturing him. Ji Tianqing stopped in his tracks and looked around. The corners of his mouth curled up into a playful smile. The 12 divine lords were all middle-aged divine clans. There were both men and women. They were both master blacksmiths and famous seniors of the various empires. But in Ji Tianqing's eyes, they were a bunch of laughable ants. They weren't worth his attention. Before he could say anything, Yank, who was 10 feet tall, straightened his neck and sneered, "What? How dare a bunch of trash block my master's path? Do you want to die? The door of the palace opens every day. You can challenge the divine craftsman inside every day. But you have been here for 2 days and you haven't challenged him. This only shows that you are too cowardly. If you don't dare to challenge him, then scram to the side. Don't be an eyesore here." Yank's words hit the divine lords where it hurt. Their faces turned red with shame and anger. Indeed, they had been here for 2 days, but they had been watching the battle outside the door. They didn't dare to go in and challenge him. Firstly, they had heard that dozens of famous master blacksmiths had been badly beaten by the white-furred divine craftsman. They were afraid of embarrassing themselves. Secondly, most of the master blacksmiths were hostile to the white-furred divine craftsman, so they didn't dare to ask to be his disciple. If they didn't succeed and became traitors in the eyes of the master blacksmiths, they would lose more than they gained. So, they hesitated for 2 days and didn't go in. But today was different. The heavenly smelting divine craftsman was about to arrive. It was said that the white-furred divine craftsman had expressed disappointment more than once in this batch of master blacksmiths. He had said in public that after the competition with the heavenly smelting divine craftsman, he wouldn't stay in Fire Dragon Mountain anymore, no matter what the result was. He wanted to go to other regions and continue to find more outstanding and talented master blacksmiths. So, the 12 divine lords were anxious. Today was the deadline. If they didn't try their best, they wouldn't have a chance. Time was very tight. The heavenly smelting divine craftsman could appear at any time. But Ji Tianqing and the other two arrived last and beat them to it. How could they not be angry? Especially when Yank had a ferocious appearance and was extremely arrogant and domineering. This made them feel even more resentment towards a common enemy. Bastard! Do you know who we are? How dare you insult us like this? Big guy, don't think you can scare people just because you're ugly. We are all master blacksmiths of the various empires. You weren't even born when we became famous. Chapter 34-28. The 12 Sir Gods attacked Yan Ku and they rubbed their palms together. It seemed that if Yank offended them again, they would attack him mercilessly. Unexpectedly, the 12 famous divine emperors failed to intimidate Yank. Instead, Yank laughed and attacked first. Ha ha ha. My master is noble and doesn't care about you. I didn't expect you to be so aggressive. Since you don't want to give me face, then, get out of my way. Yan Ku suddenly roared angrily. He raised his huge palms and slammed them in all directions, creating a dazzling divine light. Bang! Bang, bang, bang. In an instant, a series of loud, muffled noises erupted one after another. Before the 12 Sir Gods could react, they felt their vision turn black and they were sent flying out involuntarily. Plop! Plop! Many divine emperors spat out blood and flew hundreds of feet away. They crashed on the square or fell into the red maple forest. For a moment, there were continuous sounds and the square was filled with the smell of blood. The air was quiet for a moment. The 12 monarchs of God were horrified. A few of them fainted on the spot while the others groaned in pain. As for the dozens of Sir Gods on the square, they stopped their discussions and conversations. They revealed a terrified and disbelieving expression as they stared at Yan Ku with their eyes wide open. No one would have thought that Ji Tianqing and the other two, who looked unremarkable, would have such terrifying strength and means. He had injured 12 famous divine emperors with one attack. How powerful was that? For a moment, the dozens of divine emperors looked at Ji Tianqing and his two companions again. Their eyes were serious and full of fear. At the same time, the divine emperors lying in the red maple forest and on the square asked the divine emperors on the square for help. Sect Master Yi, the 3 alien races have gone too far. Please help us. Commander Lu, we are all registered disciples of Master Divine Craftsman. We must help each other. Those 3 bastards are arrogant and domineering. They are trampling on the glory of the Fire Mulberry territory and Master Divine Craftsman. We can't let them go. Prince Chen, I've brought shame to the Zisong Empire. Please save the face of the empire. The Sir Gods that were injured were the leaders of the various empires in the Fire Mulberry domain. They were also famous overlords. They were acquainted with the dozens of divine monarchs on the plaza, some shallow, some deep. Now that they had asked for help and were implicating the glory and face of the various empires and Fire Mulberry territory, it was impossible for the dozens of divine lords to remain indifferent. After only a moment of hesitation and discussion, more than 20 divine lords stepped forward and surrounded Ji Tianqing and his companions indignantly. Brat, you guys are too arrogant. This is the Fire Mulberry region, and it won't tolerate your impudence. No one here knows you, and you're so arrogant and domineering. You're definitely not from the Fire Mulberry region. People from other regions actually dare to behave atrociously in Fire Mulberry region and even injure so many people in public. You are all courting death. Today, if you don't give a reasonable explanation, don't even think about leaving. With someone taking the lead to make trouble, more Sir Gods followed suit. Soon, more than 30 Sir Gods surrounded Ji Tianqing and the other two. They began to reprimand and denounce them. Ji Tianqing looked at the Sir Gods indifferently. His eyes were cold and calm. Chao Qingyu and Yank looked indifferent as they crossed their arms in front of their chests. They didn't take the Sir God seriously at all. No matter how fierce the crowd was or how arrogant they weren't worried at all. At that moment, the white-haired divine craftsman was lying on the throne in the main hall. He looked like he hadn't woken up yet. Hearing the noise outside, he couldn't help but frown. He muttered with disdain, "A bunch of frogs at the bottom of a well. They don't have much knowledge and ability, but their tempers aren't small. The blacksmith grandmaster of the Fire Mulberry region is so useless. I've really wasted my time coming here. Forget it, I'll go to the Endless Forest region after today." Although it was very noisy outside, the white-haired divine craftsman was very disappointed. However, he was very lazy. He lay on the throne and took a nap. He had no intention of stopping or interfering. Anyway, he looked down on the blacksmith grandmasters. The mission given by his family couldn't be completed in the Fire Mulberry region. He was only waiting for the divine craftsman to arrive. After the blacksmith competition, he would leave the Fire Mulberry region as soon as possible. The situation at the gate was getting worse. More than 30 Sir Gods were filled with righteous indignation and were about to capture Ji Tianqing and his companions. Yank sneered again. He was about to use his thunderous means to teach the Sir Gods an unforgettable lesson. At that moment, a dazzling divine light lit up in the sky not far away. An exquisite dark gold divine warship that was thousands of feet long came as fast as a stream of light. The divine warship had a strange shape. There was a special emblem engraved on the hull, showing the identity of the divine warship's owner. Among the crowd in the square, someone shouted, "Look, the divine general is here." As soon as this was said, the noisy crowd immediately quieted down. Everyone looked up at the sky and focused on the dark gold divine warship. When they saw the divine warship's shape and emblem, everyone was overjoyed. Their eyes shone with excitement and anticipation. The divine craftsman is indeed here. Ha ha ha. The divine craftsman has arrived on time to teach that white-haired divine craftsman a lesson. There's a good show to watch. That white-haired divine craftsman is about to lose. Welcome, Lord Divine Craftsman. In the blink of an eye, dozens of Sir Gods turned and ran to the square, respectfully welcoming the divine craftsman. The area around Ji Tianqing and his companions suddenly became empty. No one cared about them. Swoosh! The dark gold divine warship descended from the sky and hovered above the square. After the divine sword's cabin door opened, a middle-aged man in a golden robe and a purple cloak walked out of the divine warship. This person was tall and had broad shoulders. He had a square face that exuded dignity. His long white hair hung behind his head and he wore a divine crown on his head. Behind him were 18 Sir Gods in silver armor. They were all wearing armor and wielding swords, acting as his bodyguards. Such a dignified display was even more solemn than the emperors of the various empires. Without a doubt, this burly man with white hair was the divine craftsman who had made a name for himself 10,000 years ago. The dozens of blacksmiths in the square had more or less received guidance and education from the divine craftsman. Everyone regarded themselves as disciples and students, and they all bowed respectfully. Student, disciple, welcomes the arrival of the divine general. Everyone shouted in unison. Rise, rise. The divine craftsman glanced at them indifferently and said calmly, "No need for formalities. Rise." Then, under the escort of many guards, he walked towards the palace gate. Seeing Ji Tianqing and the other two standing at the gate, 2 guards immediately rushed out from behind the heavenly smelting divine craftsman and shouted angrily, "The divine craftsman has arrived. Why aren't you getting out of the way?" The 2 guards flew back dozens of feet and fell at the feet of the heavenly smelting divine craftsman, kicking up a cloud of dust before they stopped breathing. The stench of blood in the square grew thicker. The atmosphere was exceptionally quiet and strange. The dozens of Sir Gods stared at Ji Tianqing and the other two as though they had seen ghosts. It was not that they were shocked by Chao Qingyu's strength, being able to heavily injure two high-level divine lords with a casual slap. Instead, it was the attitude of Ji Tianqing and the other two that were so arrogant. They dared to injure the guards of the heavenly smelting divine craftsman. This was clearly a declaration of war against the heavenly smelting divine craftsman. As expected. The heavenly smelting divine craftsman's face was as cold as ice, and his eyes were as sharp as swords. Before he could give the order, the other 16 guards pulled out their swords and rushed out bravely. Damn bastards, how dare you behave so atrociously in the Fire Mulberry region? You're courting death. How dare you provoke the Lord Divine Craftsman? You'll definitely die. How dare you, die? Angry shouts rang out. The 16 guards all waved their divine weapons and unleashed their most ferocious divine power, besieging Ji Tianqing and the other two. Everyone unleashed their divine abilities and ultimate skills, unleashing overwhelming saber light and sword shadows that poured down like a flood. Destructive divine power ripples filled the entire mountain peak, causing it to shake violently. The dozens of Sir Gods on the square were excited and full of anticipation. However, the outcome was the opposite of what they had expected. This time, it was Chao Qingyu who attacked. He formed a divine art with both hands and instantly shot out dozens of sword light. Every ray of sword light was dazzling and incomparably sharp. They contained the power to destroy everything. Bang! Bang bang bang! 64 divine sword lights bloomed like lotus flowers and instantly destroyed the divine powers of the 16 guards. Then, the remaining power of the 64 divine sword lights didn't dissipate and struck the guards. Even though they were all high-level divine lords, wore excellent armor, and had all sorts of defensive techniques, they were still unable to withstand the attacks. But under Chao Qingyu's divine sword lights, they were like paper. The 16 people were thrown out at the same time. Their armor was broken and shattered, and their bodies were covered in blood as they screamed. Plop plop, a series of muffled sounds came one after another. The 16 guards fell around the heavenly smelting divine craftsman, causing the square to shake and dust to fly up. The air became more and more condensed, and the atmosphere became extremely heavy and oppressive. More than 60 Sir Gods were shocked as they revealed looks of disbelief. The strength of that man in the green robe is actually so powerful. Too terrifying. The stone giant and the green-robed man's strength are both very strong, but they are only the white-robed youth's guards. One can imagine that white-robed youth's strength and status. This is already insulting Lord Divine Craftsman without any scruples. They are seriously arrogant to the extreme. They are dead for sure. Lord Divine Craftsman will definitely tear them to pieces. No one can save them. These thoughts flashed across the minds of many Sir Gods. Some were shocked, some were furious, and some were gloating over their misfortune. The heavenly smelting divine craftsman's expression became increasingly ugly, so gloomy that it was almost dripping water. His eyes spewed flames of fury as he stared fixedly at Yank and Chao Qingyu. His tone was frosty as he said with a cold sneer, "Very good. No wonder you all dare to behave atrociously in the Fire Mulberry region, so unbridled. Turns out that there are two divine king powerhouses here." The moment these words came out, several dozen Sir Gods' bodies trembled, revealing shocked and enlightened expressions. Only then did everyone understand. No wonder Ji Tianqing trio was confident and arrogant. The severely injured Sir Gods finally understood what kind of enemy they had provoked. However, the heavenly smelting divine craftsman changed the topic and said with a sinister smile, "However, so what if the two of you are divine kings? Was he really out of control? This king will let you know that there is a world of difference between divine kings. Kneel before this king. The heavenly smelting divine craftsman roared as he raised his arms with an imposing aura. With a wide roar, he raised his palms and slapped at Chao Qingyu and Yank. He had personally taken action. Moreover, he was very confident and domineering as he used his ultimate skill to attack the two divine kings at the same time. Seeing this scene, the dozens of Sir Gods felt their blood boil as the shock and awe in their hearts dissipated. They were looking forward to seeing Chao Qingyu and Yank crushed under the heavenly smelting divine craftsman's palms. Everyone stared intently at the heavenly smelting divine craftsman, Chao Qingyu, and Yank, afraid that they would miss any details. Even the white-haired divine craftsman who was lying on the seat of honor in the main hall had changed from their sleepy appearance. He opened his eyes. His gaze was clear and sharp as he looked at the door with interest and anticipation. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 3430. That old man really thinks he's a piece of cake. Yank didn't care about the murderous heavenly smelting divine craftsman at all. He muttered contemptuously. Chao Qingyu also frowned and said indifferently, "He's just a low-level divine king. How dare he be so arrogant? Looks like he's been praised too much by the world and has become arrogant." As soon as he said that, Yank raised his arms and clenched his fists to meet the heavenly smelting divine craftsman. "Get lost!" As Yank shouted, two fists as large as houses emitted a dazzling golden light and a violent energy that could destroy everything. The dazzling golden fist aura not only contained destructive divine power, but also hundreds of divine Tao laws. It was especially dazzling and illusory. Boom! Yank's fists hit the heavenly smelting divine craftsman's palms. Fist and palm collided, exploding with a deafening explosion that shook the heavens. The destructive shockwave mixed with thousands of divine light fragments splashed in all directions and created an earth-shattering hurricane. Even though the heavenly smelting divine craftsman used all his strength in anger and used his ultimate divine power, his combat power was unparalleled. He was still no match for Yank and was blown away on the spot. He was still in the air, but his face was already pale and blood was spurting out of his nose and mouth. There was also a cracking sound from his arms as they bent unnaturally and blood seeped through his clothes from his shoulders. The heavenly smelting divine craftsman couldn't deal with the violent impact. Not only was his body distorted, but he was also rolling in the sky. It wasn't until he was 100 miles away that he finally resolved the impact and stabilized his body. By then, the square at the top of Fire Dragon Mountain had already been destroyed by the shockwave. Even a few mountains within 100 miles were flattened by the shockwave. The dozens of divine lords were also swept away by the shockwave and were severely injured. They flew backward and fell into the ruins dozens of miles away. Dozens of people fell from the sky and landed in the ruins like dumplings, splashing dust into the air. Many people fainted on the spot. More than 30 divine lords who remained conscious were rolling on the ground as they wailed in pain. Dozens of miles of the mountain range shook endlessly. The dense red maple forest was also destroyed into dregs. It was a complete mess. Only the palace at the peak of the mountain remained undamaged. The heavenly smelting divine craftsman coughed violently, blood continuously dripping from his nose and mouth, and a piercing pain came from his broken arms. He was so ashamed and angry that his eyes were spitting fire. He glared at Yank who was 100 miles away, wishing he could tear him to pieces. Just a moment ago, he was still high and mighty, flaunting his might. However, at this moment, he was in a sorry state and was heavily injured. This was a great humiliation. The god sovereigns in the ruins were also looking at him with eyes filled with shock and confusion. Everyone could not understand. The high and mighty heavenly smelting divine craftsman was actually defeated in one move. How could this be? The strength of a heavenly smelting divine craftsman was actually so weak. Many divine lords began to have doubts. Their reverence and respect for the sky-smelting divine craftsman also vanished. Seeing everyone's expressions and eyes, the heavenly smelting divine craftsman could obviously guess what they were thinking. He felt even more ashamed and angry. Today, he had been swept off the altar by Yank and lost all face. With such a deep hatred, he would definitely take revenge. However, the heavenly smelting divine craftsman was still able to remain calm and did not let hatred get to his head. He finally understood. Not only could the rock giant injure him, the green-robed man was also stronger than him. The mysterious white-robed youth's strength and status were even more honorable. He could definitely crush him easily. He was facing 3 divine kings, and all of them were stronger than him. A wise man does not fight when the odds are against him. He decided to suppress his anger and killing intent and temporarily retreat. He had already made up his mind. After leaving Fire Dragon Mountain, he would find the territory Lord of Fire Mulberry Domain to help him take revenge. You guys are ruthless. I was wrong. The heavenly smelting divine craftsman stared at Ji Tianqing and the other 2 and shouted with a sinister expression, but don't be too proud. This is the Fire Mulberry Domain after all. Let's wait and see. After throwing down these harsh words, the heavenly smelting divine craftsman turned around and was about to leave. The 30 over divine lords in the ruins were in an uproar. They all found it hard to believe. What? Lord Divine Craftsman is actually running away. How could this be? He just arrived and he's already leaving. Who are those 3 fellows? They're actually so powerful. Lord Divine Craftsman is leaving just like that. Isn't he going to compete with that white-haired divine craftsman? Many of the divine lords were filled with disappointment. Their respect and admiration for the heavenly smelting divine craftsman was further obliterated. They suddenly realized that the supreme heavenly smelting divine craftsman that they had placed on the altar was actually no different from ordinary people like them. They would still be defeated by the strong, be heavily injured, be in a sorry state, and run away in humiliation. Although they were very weak and were defeated by Yank and Chao Qingyu in one move. However, the heavenly smelting divine craftsman was not any better. He was also defeated by Yank in one move. Therefore, the heavenly smelting divine craftsman was not as powerful as the legend said, nor as sacred and honorable. With this thought in mind, the reverence that the divine lords had for the heavenly smelting divine craftsman disappeared. It looked like the heavenly smelting divine craftsman was about to run away. Yank and Chao Qingyu only watched coldly as he left. They had no intention of chasing after him. Ji Tianqing stepped over the threshold and entered the hall. At this moment, the white-haired divine craftsman, who was lying on the throne, sat up straight. He raised his eyebrows, stared at Ji Tianqing and asked, "You want to challenge this king?" "That's right." Ji Tianqing walked toward the center of the hall and answered calmly. The white-haired divine craftsman nodded and said with a smile, "This king accepts your challenge, but, can you wait a moment and let this king and the heavenly smelting divine craftsman compete first? After all, this king has waited for him for so many days before he finally mustered up the courage to come. Since I've tortured his disciples and grand disciples, I naturally have to teach him a lesson. Only then can it be considered complete, right?" Ji Tianqing stared at him and carefully sized him up. Suddenly, he smiled and nodded. "Okay." The white-haired divine craftsman did not waste any more time. He used his divine sense to lock onto the heavenly smelting divine craftsman in the sky and said in a playful tone, "Heavenly smelting divine craftsman, this king has waited for you here for more than 20 days. You finally mustered up the courage to come, but you're running away with your tail between your legs. Could it be that you're afraid, so you asked these 3 god kings to cooperate with you so that you can avoid this king's competition?" The white-haired divine craftsman's voice was not loud, nor did it carry any anger, but it clearly spread over 100 miles. Not only did the heavenly smelting divine craftsman hear it clearly, but the dozens of god lords also heard it clearly. Instantly, the expressions of the god lords changed. Many of them revealed looks of realization. Clearly, they believed the white-haired divine craftsman's words. After all, god kings were not everywhere. Ordinary people might not even see one in their entire lives. The white-haired divine craftsman had waited here for more than 20 days, but Ji Tianqing and the other two had not appeared. Yet the heavenly smelting divine craftsman had come to challenge today, and Ji Tianqing and the other two had appeared. How could there be such a coincidence in this world? There must be a problem. Chapter 34-31. Previously, many divine lords felt that something was amiss. Where did those three foreign race divine kings come from? They couldn't be nameless people, so why had no one seen them before? No one knew them. What was even more coincidental was that they had arrived at the same time as the heavenly smelting divine craftsman. This was too suspicious. For a moment, dozens of divine lords were whispering and discussing. Their gazes towards the heavenly smelting divine craftsman also became somewhat complicated. 100 miles away, the heavenly smelting divine craftsman endured the humiliation and was about to leave Fire Dragon Mountain. Hearing the white-haired divine craftsman's words and seeing the strange expressions of the divine lords, he was instantly enraged. What a huge basin of dirty water! If he did not explain clearly and did not distance himself from this, what would happen? The news would probably spread to the various empires, and millions of people would say that he, the heavenly smelting divine craftsman, was a coward, his reputation was about to be destroyed, and he would become the laughingstock of the Fire Mulberry domain. Thinking of this, the heavenly smelting divine craftsman even had the intention to kill. He was so angry that his face was ashen. Without hesitation, he turned around and rushed into the palace. Bullshit. This king doesn't even know them, how can I act with them? Besides, this king's attainments in the Tao of artifact forging are known to be brilliant. Why would I be afraid of a brat like you? Although the heavenly smelting divine craftsman had just been beaten up by Yank and his injuries were quite miserable. The Tao of artifact forging was what he was best at, and what he was most proud of. When it came to the Tao of artifact forging, he was extremely confident and did not submit to anyone. The white-haired divine craftsman thought for a moment and nodded slightly. That's right. With your ability and methods, you won't be able to invite these three divine kings. You are not worthy. The heavenly smelting divine craftsman gritted his teeth in anger, but he could only endure his anger and did not dare to make a move. He walked to the middle of the hall and stood still. He glanced at Ji Tianqing and the others, then looked at the white-haired divine craftsman and sneered. Brat, don't think that such a despicable trick can hide from this king's discerning eyes. These three fellows are clearly your accomplices. The reason you all joined forces to act is to use schemes and tricks to first weaken this king's strength, then provoke this king to compete with you. However, even so, it was futile. In the face of absolute strength, all schemes and tricks were laughable. This king will soon show you what a true divine blacksmith is. The heavenly smelting divine craftsmen were confident that they would compete in the Tao of refining. At the same time, he wanted to use this opportunity to redeem himself and regain his reputation. If he didn't seize this opportunity, his reputation would be swept to the ground today, and his dignity would be completely gone. In the future, when those divine lords spread the news, they would definitely criticize him behind his back. The white-furred divine craftsman chuckled coldly with disdain. Hee. You sure are a sly old thing. To think that you would try to slander me. Forget it. This prince is too lazy to argue with you. Let's see who's the real deal. Only genuine refining skills are the most convincing. Do you think this king is afraid of you? The heavenly smelting divine craftsman sneered arrogantly and asked, Tell me, how do you want to compete? A smile appeared on the white-furred divine blacksmith's face as he said in a slow and leisurely manner, all of the trash outside know about the rules that I set. No matter what grade of divine artifact, you can choose as you wish. We will use cauldrons of the same grade and start refining at the same time. Whoever uses the shortest time and refines the most exquisite and perfect divine artifact will be the winner. If you win, I'll give you 3 king-grade low-grade divine artifacts or the corresponding refining materials with both hands. But if you lose, you will have to admit that you are a hypocrite who fishes for fame, a fake divine craftsman who is unworthy of his position. The heavenly smelting divine craftsman's face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and the veins on his forehead were throbbing. This is your so-called fairness? He. You are truly despicable. The white-furred divine craftsman raised an eyebrow. Then what do you want? The heavenly smelting divine craftsman said coldly, at least 5 divine artifacts or the corresponding refining materials. As he spoke, he had already taken a divine pill to reattach his broken arms and was circulating his energy to suppress his injuries. The white-furred divine craftsman sneered. Don't forget, you are the one who challenged this king, not the other way around. At most 4 divine artifacts or the corresponding materials. If you don't agree, then forget it. Anyway, he would not lose anything. However, the heavenly smelting divine craftsman's reputation and dignity had been severely damaged. As expected, the heavenly smelting divine craftsman frowned and thought for a while before nodding in agreement. Alright, then let's begin. As he spoke, the heavenly smelting divine craftsman took out a king-grade low-grade dark gold cauldron and said to the white-furred divine craftsman, let's use this king-grade low-grade cauldron to refine a monarch-grade divine armor. Let's see who uses the shortest time to refine a better divine armor. Clearly, the heavenly smelting divine craftsman was playing tricks. He was a lower divine king and could only refine a king-grade low-grade divine artifact at most. The white-furred divine craftsman's strength was unfathomable. He should be a middle divine king and could most likely refine a king-grade mid-grade divine artifact. This dark gold cauldron was the heavenly smelting divine craftsman's natal divine artifact, and he was very familiar with it. In the past 10,000 years, he had not had many opportunities to refine a king-grade low-grade divine artifact. In total, he had only refined a dozen of them. However, he had refined more than 1,000 monarch-grade divine artifacts. He was very experienced. After all, the emperors, royal relatives, and sect leaders of the various empires would ask him to refine divine artifacts for them. The heavenly smelting divine craftsman had absolute confidence that he could defeat the white-furred divine craftsman. Unexpectedly, the white-furred divine craftsman nodded without hesitation as if he did not see through his thoughts. Alright, we'll do as you say. As he spoke, he also took out a king-grade low-grade bronze cauldron. Everyone present, please be our witnesses. The white-furred divine craftsman said and glanced at Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and stood to the side with Yang and Chao Qingyu to watch the battle. The white-furred divine craftsman did not waste any more time. He carried the bronze cauldron to the left side of the hall and sat down cross-legged. The heavenly smelting divine craftsman brought the dark gold cauldron to the right side of the hall and sat down. The two of them looked at each other and sneered confidently. They shouted at the same time, let's begin. As they spoke, the two of them raised their hands at the same time and performed a secret art to activate the cauldron in front of them. Swish! Swish! Suddenly, the dark gold cauldron and the bronze cauldron expanded to 10 feet wide and floated in the air, slowly rotating. As the divine powers surged in, the cauldron started to burn and let out violent waves of divine powers. The white-furred divine craftsman and the heavenly smelting divine craftsman were focused on refining artifacts. Not only did Ji Tianqing and the other two watch the battle quietly, even the dozens of divine lords outside the hall held their breaths and watched intently. It was the greatest blessing of their lives to be able to watch the battle between two divine craftsmen. They even forgot about their injuries and pain. They did not even blink, afraid that they would miss any details. Chapter 34-32. Inside the hall, including the ruins outside, it was completely silent. Everyone kept quiet and held their breath as they stared at the white-haired divine craftsman and the heavenly smelting divine craftsman. To the Sir Gods, it was a rare blessing to be able to watch the two divine craftsmen forge weapons at such a close distance. If they could learn any skills or experience from it, it would definitely be an exciting harvest. Ji Tianxing, Chao Qingyu, and Yank were not in awe of the two divine craftsmen. They just wanted to observe their strength and forging skills. Time passed by quietly. 15 minutes passed quickly. The heavenly smelting divine craftsman and the white-haired divine craftsman both activated the arrays of the cauldron and cauldron. They adjusted the divine flames to the appropriate level and put in the forging materials. Although there was a certain difference between the Supreme Monarch level armor that the two of them were going to forge. There was a big difference in the divine power attribute, style, and even the materials used. The heavenly smelting divine craftsman even used 13 kinds of materials, while the white-haired divine craftsman only chose 9. After the two of them put the materials into the cauldron, they focused on forging. Seeing this scene, the dozens of Sir Gods began to discuss spiritedly. Their expressions and gazes were rather complicated. The heavenly smelting divine craftsman used 13 kinds of materials, most of which we are more familiar with. It seems that he is going to forge an icicle armor. Yes. For so many years, the armor that the heavenly smelting divine craftsman has forged the most should be the icicle armor. I remember that not only more than a dozen emperors and royal family members, but also many sect leaders have asked him to customize divine armors. The heavenly smelting divine craftsman forged the icicle divine armor for those people. In that case, the icicle divine armor is the armor that the heavenly smelting divine craftsman is best at. He is very familiar with the forging process. He should be able to complete it quickly, right? Look, the white-haired divine craftsman only used 9 kinds of materials. Can he forge a Supreme Monarch level divine weapon? Even if he is a divine craftsman, it should be very difficult, right? Didn't the heavenly smelting divine craftsman say that he needs at least 12 kinds of materials to successfully forge a Supreme Monarch level divine weapon? At present, it seems that the heavenly smelting divine craftsman has a higher chance of winning. The white-haired divine craftsman is probably going to lose. Several dozen divine Lord Realm refining Grand Masters were whispering to each other, all of them filled with confidence in the heavenly smelting divine craftsman. As for the white-furred divine craftsman, they were not optimistic about his chances. Instead, they were gloating over his misfortune. Until now, the three of them had already seen through the clues and predicted the result. Without a doubt, the heavenly smelting divine craftsman's artifact forging attainments were far inferior to the white-furred divine craftsman. He would definitely lose this competition. But Ji Tianxing saw it more clearly. He could clearly see that not only was the heavenly smelting divine craftsman's artifact forging attainments very far from the white-furred divine craftsman. There was also a huge gap in the two's strength realm. After all, the heavenly smelting divine craftsman was only a lower divine king, while the white-furred divine craftsman was a middle divine king. In terms of artifact forging techniques, the difference between the two was also enormous. The heavenly smelting divine craftsman's artifact forging techniques were relatively shallow and crude, not exquisite or profound. But the white-furred divine craftsman's artifact forging techniques were extremely exquisite and concise, with the style of a great master. It was clear that he had an extraordinary background. This discovery also confirmed a certain guess in his heart. Unknowingly, another hour had passed. It had been 2 hours since the two divine craftsmen began their competition. The heavenly smelting divine craftsman was still refining the artifact embryo of the divine armor, repeatedly forging and refining. His expression was rather focused, but his face was as cold as ice. Beads of sweat seeped out of his forehead, and deep anxiety was hidden in the depths of his eyes. But he did not dare to relax in the slightest and continued to use his artifact forging techniques with all his might. On the other side of the main hall, the white-furred divine craftsman had already stopped. He retracted his palms and placed them flat on his knees, sitting on the spot with an indifferent expression and closing his eyes to rest. The bronze cauldron floating in front of him had long since stopped spinning, and the divine fire within the cauldron had also been extinguished. Without a doubt, he had already finished his artifact forging. But seeing that the heavenly smelting divine craftsman was not done yet, he patiently waited, not in a hurry to open the cauldron. In the eyes of Ji Tianxing, Chao Qingyu, and Yank, the three of them could not help but secretly nod. This was the so-called demeanor of a great master. Not arrogant or rash, confident but not arrogant, and would not embarrass his opponent. The three of them believed that the heavenly smelting divine craftsman would definitely not be able to do this. The dozens of divine lords outside the main hall also had expressions of shock and admiration, and could not help but let out a low cry. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.